I'll
Oh,
let you know when we go live.
Oh, sorry.
So Jamie, actually, there has to be a motion from the majority floor leader again, because
Okay.
as you remember, we rose in report before we.
Okay.
You're live.
Thank you very much. Welcome back, members, to the afternoon of February 2nd. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And before I make my motion, just to kind of repeat to the body, my new committee of the whole list is Senate File 57, Senate File 60, Senate File 37 when it gets back out of committee, House Bill 29, House Bill 49, House Bill 58, and House Bill 62. And so, Mr. Speaker, I would move that the House resolve itself into committee of the whole.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, do the same. Chairman Flitner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our first bill for consideration is Senate File 57. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 57, sponsored by Education, School Finance Dates for Fund Transfers, an act relating to school finance. This bill was referred to Committee Number 4, Education, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Representatives Andrew, Brown, Connolly, Harshman, Nyman, Newsom, Obermuller, Paxton, and Summers. Signed Representative Paxton, Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Paxton?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a recommendation that Senate File 57 do pass and there are no amendments. And I would like to turn over the explanation to the good majority floor leader.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Members of the 66th, I bring you Senate File 57 and ask for your favorable consideration. Madam Chairwoman, last year we passed House Bill 159, monthly payment of ad valorem tax on mineral production. This bill changed the payment dates for the ad valorem tax on mineral production. Currently, those taxes are paid on November 10th and May 10th, similar to other property taxes. The bill provided a process to switch to monthly payments of those taxes, similar to the payment of severance taxes. The bill implements a transition period with a schedule of payments beginning with payments on October 10th, 2020. The final payment of the first transition year will be June 10th, 2021 instead of May 10th, 2021 under the prior payment schedule. The date change could cause cash flow issues for school districts and subsequently the state school foundation program for purposes of tax disbursements and recapture payments. And Madam Chairwoman, county treasurers apportion all monies in the county treasury belonging to school districts on the second Monday of each month. With the mineral ad valorem tax transitioning to monthly payments, a payment is now due on June 10th, which may fall after the second Monday of each month. What this bill does is ensures that the county treasurer makes a second payment to school districts in June between the second Monday of the month and June 20th for all monies in the county treasury that belong to school districts. This would ensure that any mineral ad valorem taxes and any other revenues belonging to school districts are paid out. Adding a second payment in June assists recapture districts so they can make their required payments, but it also assists entitlement school districts to ensure they can cash flow through their funds as well. Recall that the ad valorem taxes are estimated for the current school year, and the calculations for entitlement and recapture payments assume they collect these revenues in the current school year. And Madam Chairperson, this bill changes the apportionment date due in 21/13/207 and the recapture date in 21/13/102. Madam Chairwoman, I will quickly walk you through the bill in kind of in backwards order. So if everybody would turn to page 3 on this in 21/13/207, you can see where we're changing that apportionment date and adding that, that second apportionment. And then, Madam Chairperson, Chairwoman, if you look at 2113-102 and you go in on page 2, you can see we're moving that from June 15th to June 25th in both Romanet 1 and Romanet 2, basically moving that recapture date out. And so, Madam Chairwoman, that's basically the bill, and I would stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, and you can call me Chairman. I don't have a problem with that. Are there questions for the Majority Floor Leader? Questions? Sensing you're ready for the question.
Question.
Question having been called, all those in favor of passage of Senate File 57, please raise your hand to the screen. Opposed, same sign. Senate File 57 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Our next bill for consideration is Senate File 60. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 60, sponsored by Revenue, monthly ad valorem tax revisions 2. An act relating to ad valorem taxation of mineral production. This bill was referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Hallinan, Harshman, Henderson, Roscoe, Sweeney, Yin. Noes, Baker, Gray, Jennings. Signed, Representative Harshman, Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Harshman?
Madam Chairwoman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise and report and do so with the recommendation that Senate File 60 do pass, and further move the standing committee amendment. Madam Chair, Madam Chairwoman, it's probably easier to go through the bill and the amendment. A lot of times I like to dispatch the amendment first, I think, but the amendment is a big part of this bill as well. So if that would be okay to
Yes,
kind of
sir.
work them together. Okay,
Carry on.
thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, this really, Senate File 60 is really one of 2 bills that are working through the process. The other is Senate File 45. We ran out of time this morning on that. Going to schedule that bill for Thursday for your Revenue Committee. Really what Senate File 60 is doing is trying to finish some of the work that was accomplished with House Bill 159 last year. And it's a long road on this issue. And what this issue is all about is how our mineral companies pay their ad valorem tax. And ad valorem tax is a word that means property tax to most of us. And as you know, Madam Chair, in our state, minerals are assessed at 100%. And it's been a tremendous blessing. Our homes are assessed at 9.5%, right? And our businesses at 11.5%, but our minerals at 100%. And so we've had this problem, for decades and decades. And it became really acute a few years back when we had these massive, some of the biggest taxpayers in our state, actually a couple of the top 3 went bankrupt. And part of the issue is severance taxes are paid every month. We started that program in the 80s. When we first started the severance tax in late 60s, it was a yearly tax. And it didn't work out that our predecessors moved that to a monthly tax back in the early 80s. And really what Senate File 60 does is do the same thing with the ad valorem tax. Currently, it's paid twice a year, and it's on production that is like a year and a half old. And so, when we get into these deals where a company gets behind, we really don't even know until really after the fact. And then the bankruptcy issue is a whole nother issue. This bill doesn't have anything to do with that, but we were at the bottom of the lien list, right? We were last in line. So not only did we find out late, we didn't have any liens standing, but that's another issue, Madam Chairman. And you'll remember, well, a good speaker, I think, co-chaired that, management council appointed that, acted quickly and appointed a special committee, gave them the authority to draft legislation. And they came back with House Bill 159. And really what we're trying to do now is advance this forward. So there's two ideas to do it. This idea in Senate File 60 is supported by industry, all of our mining. We heard this morning from the drone industry, the coal industry, and the representatives from oil and gas, and that this is the preferred method. It'll be the easiest method. It'll be collected on the exact same time, the exact same values as the severance tax, paid to the Department of Revenue where they currently pay their severance tax, instead of having to do a whole nother accounting deal and pay it to counties twice a year on production that's a year and a half old. The issue then is how you transition. That's the devil in the details. And I think a lot of legislators have been working on this, right? So really what this does, it starts a monthly payment plan in January of 2022. And so really 1 year from now. But then what happens to that year and a half of production? I think back in the 80s, they just let the severance tax, they forgave it, said you don't have to pay it. We obviously can't do that. But we don't want to charge mineral companies, kind of give them a double taxation bill right away. So we've gone through this process. And as your new revenue chair, I wasn't involved in this in the interim. But I think they've reached what I call the Goldilocks spot that's probably just right. And where you heard, Revenue Committee heard testimony this morning from, like I say, from all those industries as well as the counties, that this is, approach that they can live with. So it takes that year and a half in the rears from, I think it'll be half of 20 and all of 21 will be paid out over the next 12 years. And so then that creates some shortfall problems for your local governments, because we're like every other state. We fund schools with property taxes. The issue in Wyoming is we pay for, the only one really paying property taxes are minerals, right? They pay over half our property taxes. So it's going to have some shortfall issues where these local governments, counties, your local district boards from cemetery districts, hospital, rec districts, you name it, water districts, and your county commissioners, they make up, I'm told, about 25% of that tax revenue, and the school district somewhere over 70% of that tax revenue. And so then how do you do that? Well, the Senate put a placeholder in for 10 million to have a loan out of the LSRA. That later got amended to 40 million. Last night, I get an email from our LSO staff said, we think we've encountered a little problem. We think we got an easy fix. I didn't even know to go that there was a problem. And so we brought us a suggested amendment, and your Revenue Committee, Madam Chairwoman, adopted that amendment this morning. And so, members, if you have that bill, and I'm trying to work my screens here, and you can see the bill is pretty short, and it really goes in and amends 3913-111, right? And the ad valorem taxes. And so it moves this to a monthly value. And you can see that on page 2 of the bill. And it talks about this, then it goes over to page 2 on to page 3, talks about this transition period of 8% a year, over the next 12 years. And then you can see in section 3 that $40 million loan appropriation to the state treasurer from the LSRA to do these loans to local governments to get through this transition period. And then those would all be paid back and redeposited in the LSRA. And so then the amendment that was brought to us, you can see it on the standing committee amendment, Madam Chairwoman, that there were a couple little cleanups on words, really, which are on the first page of the amendment. Lines 1 through 7 were brought to us, 1 through 6 were brought to us by the county commissioners. And then the rest of this is brought to us by our LSO staff. And the words estimated and how that is figured at school districts, because all of it's worked on estimated revenue. And then, Madam Chairman, if you go to page 2 of the amendment, the part that took me some understanding was really section 3. So you can see the 40 million is deleted and it's down to 17 million. And then you see a new paragraph B on line 30, which is a $26 million appropriation. But instead of going to the state treasurer, you can see it goes to the Department of Education, where the state superintendent then will administer this shortfall through this period. And then that all gets accounted for and paid back. And then the state treasurer will administer the $17 million that will, bridge the counties and our special districts through this period, this transition period. So again, I think supported by all our industries, supported by our counties, our own revenue department. I just got off the phone with the director, and obviously they're not going to take a position on a bill, but he said this is certainly the most easy to administer. And in testimony, it'll be the least cost to administer as well. And with that, Madam Chairwoman, I don't know, however you want to do it, if we want to call a question on the standing committee amendment, or if we want to talk about it some more and then vote them both here after a bit.
All right.
Whatever
Thank
you do.
you. Thank you, Chairman
you.
Harshman. I saw where Representative Hallinan had his hand up early on before you moved into the amendment. A Majority Floor Leader Summers, do you have a procedure? No. Okay. You have a question? All right. We'll stick with Representative Hallinan. I think let's dispatch the amendment first, Mr. Chairman, if you're fine with that. And so are there questions on the amendment? And Representative Fortner, you had your hand up right after Representative Hallinan. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I was wondering if the committee had any testimony from industry on this bill or the amendment or any of that. Since they're hanging by a thread, I was wondering if they got any testimony from them folks. Thank you.
Chairman Harshman.
Sure. And we're in committee of the whole, so unlimited debate. I can just take these one at a time, and revenue committee can step in there as well. Good representative from Campbell County. Absolutely. Yes. The Wyoming Mining Association testified in support. And of course, they represent the big employers and big businesses in your county. The Trona industry in Sweetwater testified, agreed. They supported this bill, and the petroleum, the folks that represent oil and gas producers testified in support. Absolutely.
Thank you. Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And perhaps I might delay it. If you're going to take the amendment, do you want to take the amendment questions first? Mine is actually on the bill.
Yes, ma'am. We're dealing with the amendment right at this point. So
Okay, I'll wait and circle back.
all right, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. And my question to the good Chair of Revenue is, and I don't know, it might be on the bill and it might be on this because there's some dates in the amendment, but I just want to make sure, because I know when I talked to my county treasurer, they had really quite a bit of concern about this bill and whether they were going to come out whole in it. So what I want to understand is, okay, we have a loan, because we never really, never really explained the whole bill. So we had a loan that's going to cover this cost as we move out over time, and industry, kind of ramps up, and industry pays that a little bit at a time, but this loan will bridge the gap. So my question is, do the dates all line up good, where the loan's there and we're not going to have a period of time before the loans come in and after the insufficient taxes collected that's going to mess with budget? So is the timing of the loans and the tax payments in such a manner to allow for good budgeting by our local governments?
Thank you. Chairman Harshman.
Madam Chairwoman, to the good majority leader, I think the answer is yes. I mean, and that's the testimony we had, and we had the representative from that county commissioner group, and as well as the president of that group, who is a county commissioner, and particularly with the amendment to peel the schools out of that, because 70% of that tax goes to schools. So you got counties going in to get a loan, and then it took another month to get it to schools, and then another, and then to do the whole recapture process through the school finance. That's where it was getting kind of messy. So I think everybody feels pretty good about the way this is amended, and they've worked together on it. So that's my answer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I might just show a rookie here for a second, but I'm looking at the bill, obviously Senate File 60, then I go over to the Senate File 60 amendment, and I go down and it's not lining up. Like if you go page 4, there isn't a line 9. Am I missing something desperately here, or what's going on?
Representative Haroldson, you probably need to pull up the engrossed version of the bill. So if you'll go back and pull that up, then I'm sure it'll all fall in line. But if you still have questions after that, come back to us. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mr. Chairman, just a technical question. When they're calculating the difference of that year and a half, are they just guesstimating what that tax difference is going to be and hope that it fits within the right amount or the budget? And how, I guess I'm trying to figure out, are we hopeful that it's going to be the right amount for that loan, or how are we calculating that? Are we just guesstimating, or are we going on past projections? How are we figuring that?
Representative, or Chairman Harshman, rather.
Madam Chair, initially, like starting next January, those will be estimates. I mean, they'll have to be, because tax wouldn't be due yet anyway. But I think they'll be pretty good estimates because they know the severance tax amounts, right? Those have been paid. And so I think everybody's pretty confident in that. And it'll all get trued up and through the accounting process at the end. It's my understanding.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just wanted to add a little backstory to what we had in testimony during the committee. A fair question might be, how many counties are affected? And we received testimony that said that there were only 3 counties. The one where the big hills are, the mountains over close to the northwest part of the state, and then over here on the Platte River, the Platte one with the Platte River, and then Goshen. But every county is going to be affected in terms of the education piece, right? And so if you think about this in terms of a bridge type of arrangement to get us from where we've been to where we need to be over the next couple of years and so forth going forward to get this fine-tuned, I think this is the urgency of this bill. But, the good chairman mentioned, the apportionment of the like the schools, about 75% and so forth. But the other thing that I took away from it was the rise in delinquencies. Everybody's been affected by the recent months, of course. But a few years ago, we had about a 10% delinquency rate. And I think it's important to be on record as making sure we recognize that most everyone involved here, wants to do the right thing and has been doing the right thing as much as possible in terms of paying their taxes on time. So we've gone from a 10% delinquency rate, and it's gone up to over 275 companies delinquent in this past year. So it's gone up. So we need to do something about it. I think this is a good step. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this is a question, I guess, a question and a comment. Comment first is, thank you. I think this amendment, speaking on the amendment, actually provides the right transition that I've spent 5 years trying to come up with. And I think I do appreciate the continued hard work on behalf of our counties and their county officials and the industry to get to that right spot on the transition, particularly the school part of it. the educational foundation, the school foundation program, and bringing that money into it, because obviously that puts less at risk, takes money off the table for the state, i.e. through the LSRA. So I think that's a good piece. The other thing is that this transition, particularly for schools, is where it's most concerning, because schools, because they have the greatest, the most skin in the game, if we have the most revenue coming toward them, the transition for them, for a failed transition or for a delinquency, is the greatest. And to the point of my good colleague from Cheyenne, from the capital city, that's where the greatest risk is. And of course, that's where the greatest consequence is too, for education, for students and potentially some of our communities. There's only a couple of communities that are still counties that are still generating more educational revenues than they use in their counties, i.e. their recapture counties. Money flows away from them. Everybody else in the state, every other educational K-12 education receives money from that, or a part of their money from that. So I appreciate the transition that's occurring. I appreciate the fact that we're going to give the head of education in the state of Wyoming an opportunity to be a part of this. And so I'm on and for the amendment and appreciate that transition and the work that's been done by, one, our LSO staff, and two, our committee that took it up and understood it and is bringing it forward. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate that further information. Are there any more questions on the Standing Committee amendment? And you've heard the motion. Are you ready for the question?
Question.
Question having been called, all those in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed, same sign. Standing Committee amendment has passed. We are back on the bill. Chairman Harshman, do you need to add anything further? Or would you like to take, I see we have a hand up now. Chairman Wilson, I know she had a question on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I did have a question, and my question is on page 5, line 4. We've appropriated $1 to the Department of Revenue for the cost of implementing this act. And I'm just wondering, was that out of the goodness of our heart, or was that a placeholder for something larger that we were meaning to fill in and forgot? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We heard in testimony this morning that we don't have the exact number, but this bill was testified to be less than 300,000 do that. And then you returning members might recall, we appropriated about $500,000 a year ago to help on some of these tax collection issues not related to this bill. And I'm working on trying to find out how much of that money is left over. So there will be a small appropriation. Wouldn't have to probably, but I think a small appropriation as we move through second, third reading. But that was put in as a placeholder by our colleagues down the hall.
Thank you. Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As a representative of Campbell County, I was very concerned with what this debt would amount to for our companies there and our employees there. And I think that this amendment, or this bill, recognizes the needs of our county for this money. It also recognizes the need of our industry to stay in business. And that's proven by the approval of all the entities around the state that are in the industry, in the minerals and oil industry. At our committee, they all supported this bill. Also, the counties around the state, by their representatives, approved this bill. With that in mind, I think we've achieved a compromise that has eluded us in the past. And I think that our communities can be happy with this result. So with that in mind, Madam Chairman, I support this bill, and I urge my colleagues also to support it. I think that the opportunity to support a good bill should not be lost. And we should support this bill, and we should do it now. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Representative Jennings?
Yeah, I just, thank you, Madam Chairman. My esteemed colleague on the current committee didn't quite get that. There were a number of us that did oppose this, but that'll be as it may be.
Do we have any further questions on Senate File 60? Representative Kern.
Yeah, I noticed one small, thank you, Madam Chairman. It said in the amendment that on page 4, line 5 or line 6, after you delete dollars, I think you'll have to go to line 5 and delete 40 million in front of dollars to put in the 17 million. That's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Any further questions regarding the bill? Question having been called. All those in favor of Chairman Harshman's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that Senate File 60 do pass, please raise your hands. Opposed, same sign. Senate File 60 has passed the committee of the whole, and I would like to at this point recognize our majority floor leader.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do is we're going to rise and report in a minute. I'll do that motion, and then we'll receive another bill out of committee. And so then after that, the new committee of the whole list, after we go through that procedure, will be House Bill 29, and then Senate File 37, and then House Bill 49, House Bill 58, House Bill 62. So with that, Madam Chairwoman, I move that the committee of the whole rise and report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion carries.
Thank you, Chairman. The reading clerk will read the committee of the whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 57, do pass. Senate File 60, do pass, amended.
I'm sorry. I move the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? The report is adopted. Thank you very much, Chairman Flitner. Chief Clerk, committee reports.
Your committee number 2, appropriations, to whom was referred Senate File 37 engrossed, omnibus water bill planning, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kinner, Larson-Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Signed, Representative Larson, Vice Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, to whom was referred House Bill 52, Wyoming School Protein Enhancement Project. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kinner, Larson-Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Signed, Representative Larson, Vice Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways and Military Affairs, to whom was referred House Bill 20, Driver's License Requirements, Visual Acuity, respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Baker, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Henderson, McGuire, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Stivard. Signed, Representative Burkhart, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways and Military Affairs, to whom was referred House Bill 21, Wyoming National Guard, Preference for Education, respectfully report same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Representatives Baker, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Henderson, McGuire, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Stivar. Signed, Representative Burkhart, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom was referred House Bill 23, Highway Safety, Child Restraints, respectfully reports same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes Representatives Baker, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Henderson, McGuire, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Stivar. Signed, Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Or Chief Clerk, is there anything else for us?
No, sir.
All right, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House resolve itself into Committee of the Whole.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? Chairman Flitner, without objection, or minimal objection, I should say. Chairman Flitner.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And if the good majority floor leader would just remind us all once again of the order of our bills, I would appreciate that.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. I will. So it will be House Bill 29, Senate File 37, House Bill 49, House Bill 58, House Bill 62, and House Bill 52. I just added that on based upon that, what was read in, and then if we get that far, I might consider others, but I think that'll be probably quite a few. Thank you.
Very good. I appreciate that. Thank you. So the first bill for our consideration is House Bill 29. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 29, sponsored by corporations, elections, and political subdivisions, burial for indigent persons, an act relating to indigent persons burial expenses. This bill was referred to Committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representative Blackburn, Clausen, Clifford, Duncan, Ayer, Hunt, McGuire, Roscoe, Zwanitzer. Signed, Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman. It was re-referred to Committee number 2, Appropriations, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kinner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stiff, Walters. Signed, Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rise to report it, do so the recommendation that House Bill 29 do pass. There is a standing committee amendment that if I could just take care of it this time, I'll do a little bit of background on the bill before turning it over to my good Vice Chairman. I did believe I just sent out a handout with a PDF from one of the agencies affected to this bill. It looks like it went through. So again, those of you who were here last year, you'll remember that in the budget, we had a budget amendment, a mere budget amendment that dealt with a situation that counties in Wyoming were increasingly facing difficulties paying for indigent burials. And so we provided a cost mechanism from death certificates in the Department of Vital Records to be an additional fee to help pay for a reimbursement to some counties who were facing extraordinary costs when it came to providing for indigent burials. The chief executive did veto that with the explanation he believed that to be legislating in the budget and encouraged it to be brought as a standalone bill. So the Interim Corporations Committee did take on that task and brought the bill before you. You will see there is a significant Committee of the Whole amendment. I'll explain at the proper time. For the Standing Committee amendment, though, we heard from our state treasurer in the mechanisms of the bill. It tasked the state treasurer for collecting the fees from the vital records would send to them, deposit them, and then distribute the funds. The state treasurer's office said they didn't need to be involved. That was agreed upon by our department that oversees family services, that does manage where half of the monies would be going to. And so what we've done in the standing committee amendment, the second part is take out the state treasurer fully from being involved in the process and just leaving it with the Department of Family Services to manage the funding mechanism. As well, we had an additional amendment, you'll see on page 1, line 15, to allow the counties to decide if they want to bury the indigent or cremate. We've had that discussion in previous years. Most of the county and county coroners previously said they don't generally cremate indigents in case, kin comes forward later on, or, financials are brought from someone to move a burial. But we did hear in the interim that there are some cases where it is much cheaper for cremation, and if the coroner believes and the county commissioners, if they want reimbursement, believe that no one will step forward, they can do the much more cost-effective process of cremating an indigent instead of burial at their discretion, and therefore the county would then be liable should someone come forward. But if the county wanted that liability, more power to them. That is the standing committee amendment, Madam Chairwoman. I would be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Questions on the standing committee amendment?
Question.
Question having been called, all those in favor of the standing committee amendment, please raise your hands to the screen. All those opposed, same sign. Standing committee amendment has passed. We are back on the bill. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Because I did explain a little bit of the bill just now, let me just continue, and I think it'll make it easier for the body. And so what was anticipated, members, when this bill came forward, is currently there's basically a bifurcated system. If an indigent is on some generally form of a public program, so POWER, which is our personal opportunities with employment responsibilities, what we call it in Wyoming. If they're on supplemental security or Medicaid and they pass away, there is an account housed within our Department of Family Services that helps pay for those burials if they are currently receiving government assistance. If they are not, there's a separate process where the county is in charge of that burial. And so we anticipated a process that would bifurcate the funds paid for by the addition on death certificates to be distributed under the original bill from the interim, 50% and 50%. So that's what the bill does. I think if it's okay, Madam Chairman, and I'm not seeing any hands, I'm going to present the standing committee amendment, which does some rearranging of the bill, and I think presents a better outcome for the body. So I'm not seeing any hands. If I could talk about the standing committee amendment, Madam Chairman.
Please.
Committee of the whole, please.
Committee of the whole, Mr. Chairman, right.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased to present Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 29 and ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you, Chief Clerk.
Move that, Mr. Chairman.
I did just move that.
Thank you.
So move. Standing Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1. And so what this does, ladies and gentlemen, it keeps, you'll see the cremation language in, but it basically sets a fee in statute to have a maximum of reimbursement. So we're basically, when we looked at all of the counties and what they're reimbursing, and as where the impetus of this bill started was from really your county commissioners coming forward and your funeral directors coming forward, your mortuaries saying, it's superbly expensive to do some of these indigent burials and we're not reimbursed very well from the counties. So we looked at what each county charges, and in some counties we can't find a funeral director or a mortuary to perform this service. They just say it's cost prohibited. And so we kind of took an aggregate, looked at what other states did, and I, with consultation of a couple of people, settled on this $1,500 amount, which would be the maximum reimbursed to the counties. And so you'll see we have a mechanism each year where the Department of Family Services would house the total funding, and the counties would thereby apply to the department, where 50% would be set aside to be distributed equally based on the number of requests. And I know we talked, there are some counties, I think it's fair to say, where they have a higher number of indigent burials, but I believe the county commissioners, the association which oversees county commissioners and the counties working in tandem would keep that number responsible on who needs reimbursement. So that's really what it does, is set a fee in statute. I didn't see a better way around it than just setting a numerical value of 1,500 would be the maximum reimbursed that a county could apply for to bury indigents in their county. And then again, it keeps the $5 surcharge from death certificates to go into that fund, that as long as there's money in that fund, it gets redistributed once a year. I hope I explained that relatively well, Madam Chairwoman, but if not, I'd be happy to answer questions and try hard.
Thank you, Chairman Zwanitzer. Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So Chairman Zwanitzer, just to make sure I understand 183504, essentially the counties will be paying for the burial and waiting potentially up to 2 years for reimbursement. Is that correct?
And thank you, Representative Schwartz. And just want to remind everybody about proper names. So Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Through you, to answer that question, I believe it is annually, well, for the preceding fiscal biennium. Nope, it is once every 2 years they will submit their reports and be distributed. So yes, a county could be waiting for up to conceivably 23 months, 23 and a half months for reimbursement. And again, it would come at the, the divided by the number of petitions of indigent burials that counties ask for reimbursement for. But that is correct, yes.
Follow up, Representative Schwartz, or is that good?
Madam Chairwoman, please, if I may.
Go ahead.
In the discussions, Honorable Chairman, did the County Commissioner Association bring that point up?
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I don't believe the association that deals with counties discussed on the 2-year reimbursement. However, this came out of a conversation with that organization, several other organizations and state agencies on how to best do that. So they were certainly given this language and said it would work and did not bring up that point. So I'll take that as tacit approval, I guess.
Thank you. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. And I guess my question to the good chairman is, you know, when I looked at the document that you'd sent out, and I believe what I saw was number of recipients, and it showed, you know, 288 in 2016 to 174 in 2020. So I guess my question is would those be the numbers you would kind of multiply by this 1,500 to figure out what the exposure, because we're not going to see this fiscal note on this amendment in the fiscal note for the bill. So I'm trying to figure out the fiscal note for the amendment. So I'm assuming if you take 200 times 1,500, you're going to get kind of to that area. Is that a fair assessment?
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Madam Chairman, I guess I believe, yes, that is a fair assessment. So again, the money in the fund total will come from the $5 surcharge on death certificates. So there will be a maximum amount in the account every biennium, and I assume it will be drained. So if the reimbursements, you know, saying the maximum is only 900, if we divide it up by the total number of petitions, that's what it is. So there will be a set limit to what can be distributed based on the number of death certificates issued in the previous biennium.
Follow up,
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. And so just to follow the money a little longer, Mr. Chairman, what's the amount that, so you have the $5 fee, right? That we put on death certificates, and that's expected to generate, and I assume that is in the fiscal note, but if you can walk me through the dollars on this thing. So $5 per death certificate equals how many dollars we're anticipating, how many dollars goes out? I want to hear it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Madam Chairman, thank you. And this is attached in the fiscal note. It's roughly 181,000 a year, which is what, 362,000 a biennium. Based on that $5 surcharge, on average, the Department of Health, which oversees vital statistics, anticipates 36,200 death certificates being issued each year. So at about a pot of 362,000 a biennium, half of that again would go to the Department of Family Services to pay for the indigent burials of people who are on governmental assistance programs, and the other half would be distributed to the counties based on the number of indigent burials throughout the counties. And so certainly in some years, and probably most years, that $1,500 cap probably wouldn't even be reached at the $5 amount. But that would be the mechanism for the bill, that everyone gets something, and counties are still on the hook to pay for those excess charges. Again, this is currently negotiated between the county and the, let's say, funeral home, whoever's doing the indigent burial. And the prices are all across the board, from as cheap as $500 or $600 to, above $3,000 in some counties. Because in some counties, there's truly maybe only one mortuary who even engages this. But we've heard from the association who oversees mortuaries and funeral services that it is not cost effective for them to continue doing this out of the goodness of their heart if they're not going to be reimbursed, and if they're going to be reimbursed for lower than what it would cost them to do business. And that was really the impetus for the bill, or the budget amendment and the bill last year.
Representative Larson-Lloyd, you've been so patient standing there holding your hand up all this time. Please proceed.
It was getting heavy too, Madam Chairman, but thank you. So Chairman Zwanitzer, if I may, in reference to the good majority floor leader's comment referring to the handout you had where you had the 288 individuals, I believe those are individuals that were on the DFS program that were getting government funding. So then you'd want to add to that, I believe, if my understanding is correctly, if you're trying to get the sum total of what DFS would cover plus indigent burials that would come under the county program. Then the county program in the amendment, if you'll just verify that I've got this accurate, in the county program, we are going to allow up to $1,500 in burial coverages. In the Department of Family Service program, it will continue to have a maximum benefit of only $500. And so there will be a difference in there, in those two. And so again, if just help me make sure that I'm not off track. So we've got this surcharge in there that's going to generate that 188 or whatever it is annually. A year later or 2 years later, how if we don't have a second amendment reading or second reading amendment, they'll get those requests back from the counties. They'll get the request from DFS, and they'll take that revenue that has been generated off from those death certificates, and then they have to evaluate how many requests from the counties there are and divide that from the revenue that is in there. Could be that we have more revenue and we could pay for all of the indigent burials up to $1,500 and have some left over, but it could be the other way around too. That's why the delay in time, if I understand correctly. And then the same procedure currently exists and would continue to exist with the Department of Family Services. Based upon the funding, they could reimburse up to $500 per request. Do I have that accurate?
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Madam Chairwoman, I believe that is accurate with the stipulation that it's the department's choice right now to do that $500 reimbursement. I believe the statute still says 1,000. And so they're, based on the current budget cuts, I'm not, you're actually, the good Vice Chairman of Appropriations is probably more familiar on the cuts or what that number of reimbursement that the department would reimburse. Right now it's at 500 based on the budget reductions, but in statute, they do have the allowability to go up to 1,000. But otherwise, yes, he is correct.
Follow up, Madam Chairman.
Yes. Mhm.
But I believe the difference, and again, up to $1,000, and they've established that to be at 500 is by rule. So
Correct?
Madam Chairman, yes, that is correct. If
Thank
that was
you.
directed to me.
Okay. Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So on page 2, line 18 and actually 19, am I understanding this correct? Say a person dies and their relatives need a copy to send here or a copy to send there. Maybe pretty soon they need to send 5 copies. So are they going to have $5 charge on each one of those copies? Am I understanding that correct?
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Madam Chairman, I believe the good representative is correct, yes. And the testimony we heard is the average number of death certificates can be between 2 and 5 that families order. And so that would be a $5 charge on each death certificate. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative Burt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On the fiscal impact at the bottom of the notice agency, the estimate, it does show that it could increase responsibilities of the agency, both on spending and staff requirements. Has the agency actually submitted its administrative impact and what the additional costs were to carry this out?
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And so let me say that there was a lot of discussion in the past 2 weeks from where the interim bill was onto the standing committee amendment. And some of it also revolves around a bill you'll see in the Appropriations Committee as a committee bill. What basically has been agreed to or is acknowledged is that the department, which oversees family services, will now be the custodian of these funds. You'll know we took the state treasurer completely out of the mix at their request. It took some conversations that the Department of Family Services would manage these funds, and they did say, I guess I can relate what they told me, is they would do this without additional administrative impact, no further requests for staffing or funding, that they could take on this responsibility as part of the duties they now have. So no additional administrative impact, even though the department is going to take on some additional duties and having to do these reimbursements. And they acknowledge that without asking for additional funding or staff in these difficult times.
Thank you. And I just remind everybody, we are on committee of the whole amendment to House Bill 29. Vice Chairman Larson.
thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just would share with you that as we looked at this, we had a similar situation coming through the Department of Family Service budget where we were going to have to do some amending because of their budget cuts to the indigent burial program. This bill and the amendments come to us really cleans up and helps to establish policy that did not exist prior. And the key component of that policy is we provide a funding mechanism to help the counties and yet continue to provide services to those who are on the assistance programs. Well done. I think that you've I think your committee's done a great job of circling the wagons and addressing the county's concerns and keeping the department in loop and getting the administrative thing in an efficient manner and setting policy for the state. I certainly support the amendment in the bill. Well done.
Thank you. It's not easy circling wagons. Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chairman, as I read the fiscal note, it looks like we're going to impose or proposing to add a fee of $5 per death certificate because the DFS has, with the budget cuts that they've experienced, no longer wants to administer this indigenous burial program. So on the other side of the coin, if we did not enact this legislation, what would happen with the indigenous burial program without this bill?
Chairman Swaniser.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So let me first say that an agency has no position on the policy. They don't want or not want to do something. They have a set amount of money that they are trying to find budget reductions with. And when they look at their overall agency mission, they discussed with the chief executive and through their own rules and regs on trying to manage everything appropriately, they set it at $500. And actually, I would praise the department that they have been agreeable to taking on what you see in this amendment after consultation, that they are agreeable to take this on without additional staffing resources. The interim committee, which I was not a part of, so I'm struggling a little bit, and I think the good Vice Chair Minerals will help me, did propose this fee of $5 on death certificates. And that was an idea that we've had for several years that has been fleshed out with the Department of Health through their Division of Vital Statistics. When we looked at what other states charge for death certificates, we're certainly not out of the norm, and this is how this is handled in other states. So we're modeling after other states. And really, it's just been a 2 or 3 year long process to get to this point where we're trying to do the best we can on our general funds for a difficult issue that we've been kind of unfairly asking our funeral homes to eat some of the costs, and it's not been right. So this is, I think, the best attempt we've got to so far on finding a funding solution and a solution that gives a little bit of money to counties to help with, some exorbitant expenses in some cases, and continues to provide for those who are most needy on some of these government programs when they pass, that they still, deserve a proper burial. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. And Representative Duncan, your hand was next, but I saw where Vice Chairman Larson's hand came up, and I wondered if he had something he wanted to provide as an addition to this testimony on that question.
Madam Chairman, with you and the good Vice Chair Minerals' permission, I don't want to get slapped for butting in line.
You can deal with you later, but go ahead.
Thank you. So to I think address perhaps and share with the good representative who lives south of the wildlife refuge question on what would happen if we didn't do this is exactly the question that was coming before the Appropriations Committee, because this program that the department was administering is funded with general fund dollars, and part of the step 3 reduction was they was going to eliminate that. They had this cushion of this footnote that was going to get them through the remainder of the year and kind of help the funeral homes out, but then it was going to stop. And so as we visited with county commissioners and our funeral home directors, as well as the department, again, there really wasn't an established policy. Who's responsible for what? Everybody was kind of hoping that the state would belly up to the bar and kind of help take care of this. And we were kind of pushing back and say, well, it's probably the county's problem. But then the interim work of the Corporations Committee come in and said, no, for indigent, it really is the county's responsibility. For those who are on these programs administered by DFS has statutorily the responsibility, but maybe not funding. So we're going to put this funding component in there to where by policy, the county can then take care of those indigent burials and get reimbursed through those funds generated through the death certificate costs, and the Department of Family Services can continue to administer their program on funds generated through that and not through general funds. And so I think it was a pretty good wedding or welding of the problem to help establish policy moving forward. Again, just my compliments back to that committee.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm jumping out of my chair. I'm trying to get to the podium. I need to remind everybody, number one, this is a public health issue. You have a person who has passed. What do? They have no family, they have no funds, they have no means. The county has to bury them. They have to do something with them. Who's going to pay for it? Private business, private individuals. So this is individuals and private businesses are being forced to subsidize the government's obligation to dispose of these indigent bodies. It's a public health issue. So why is it fair that the private businesses, maybe you have a business, I have a business, we're having to pay for that and not get funded for it? So that's the bottom line here. That's the bottom line, is that we are forcing private businesses, these mortuaries, to bury these people because our counties, our government has the obligation to bury them. So it's an unfunded mandate is what this is, simply. It's an unfunded mandate that these businesses are having to do. So we did this bill last time during the budget session, and then we turned around and the governor turned around and said, we can't legislate in the budget. So he vetoed it. So he wasn't against it or opposed to it, but it just couldn't be in the budget. So now we've come back around and done this. So essentially, for you to understand, in the very simplest of terms, this is an unfunded mandate. So what we're doing is we're adding $5 on a death certificate to pay for the public health issue so that private businesses don't have to pay for this public health problem for this currently an unfunded mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. And as I've listened to the debate, I've heard the word indigenous get mixed up with the word indigent. And so I just want to make sure that we keep on task here, which is indigent, and just try to remember that it's not the other way. And so finally, Madam Chairwoman, I just want to throw my support behind this amendment. We are on the amendment, even though it really is kind of becomes the bill at this point. And I am in favor of this amendment, and I am in favor of this bill. And I think the previous speaker kind of hit the nail on the head there. You can do it two ways, right? You can either charge death certificates, or you can have private individuals have to raise their prices to pay for what is an unfunded mandate to them. And I think it's the right thing to do is for we in government to step up and do that, because it's not really their job. They would just have to do it and then have to pay for it and then have to raise their prices to us. So on in support of this amendment and this bill, and ask people to be respectful of the name.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Hallinan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It was my budget amendment in 2020 that had the elements of this bill in it, that got vetoed by the governor. And I'd like to thank Representative Zwanitzer and his committee for restoring this bill before this legislature to prove it this time. So I'm very happy to say that he's restored this bill, and I'm glad to see that it's going to come up at this session. So I'm fully in support of this bill. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And I'll remind everybody, we're on the committee of the whole amendment. And then once again, no proper names, everybody. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I'm trying to understand, because I see this trend a lot in the state legislature, and I've become more and more questioning of it. I mean, it happened in the bill we just heard 2 ago, which is the state assigns a function to the counties, and it's called an unfunded mandate. But the reality is that it was supposed to be originally funded out of their general property tax mills. And that's what the general property tax mills aren't assigned. The whole concept is that it's for the general functions of the counties, of which the state, through its creation of the counties and state statute, assigns. And every year there are probably around 10 bills. And, I'm thinking actually going through last year and trying to count it would take a while, where the state takes over a function that was assigned to the counties and that really should be paid for out of their general property tax mills. And the counties don't want to take that anymore and do that. I mean, we just had two ago where that was done. And I just think this trend, to me, it's a big trend, and it isn't talked about a lot, and it doesn't, this is very important, but that trend doesn't make sense to me. And I find it very disturbing. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Washut.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, if we're experiencing cost shifting now, where families of deceased loved ones are paying more for their funerals in order to offset the cost that the private businesses at the mortuary are bearing in order to bury the indigent. How much was that? How much did we see? And will we anticipate that there will be a cost decrease in the average cost of burials for non-indigents because we start compensating the funeral homes to bury the indigents more appropriately? Just a question.
Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thanks, Madam Chairwoman. So to respond to the last 2 questions, and I think they're both very good points. The question is it a county function or a state function? And I think the increasing trend, especially when it comes to indigent burials, is sometimes the indigent are also very transitory. And so some counties have a higher number of indigent burials, even if that person is not, let's say, a resident or been a resident for a long amount of time. Some cases they've been a lifelong resident, but in some cases, in some counties, we're talking about a very transient population. They just happen to pass at a certain time in a certain county. And so maybe it's a state's role, maybe it should be each county. The problem we were running into, especially in our smaller counties who may only have, one mortuary, is they were just refusing. And I think that's perfectly appropriate for private business to say, you can't pay me enough. It's not my job. I have more than enough on my plate. And so counties were trying to go across county lines, especially in the basin, was a major issue 3 years ago. And then you add in transportation costs for transport of a body. And it just got to be extreme. And we could, I guess, force counties to do that. But it did seem unfair is perhaps the easiest term, that if you were on a social assistance program, there was a reimbursement from the state level. It's general fund through the Department of Family Services. So if you were on a social service program, you got some reimbursement. And if you weren't, you're just SOL. And so it was really both the Funeral Directors Association and the counties saying there is a drastic issue here, because in some cases, this is all public funds. So you can go back and see what these negotiated contracts were in each county. And some were as easy as 500 or 600. And I think in 2 counties, from what I remember, they were actually somewhat, I shouldn't call them competitive contracts, but people were willing to do this. And in some counties, there was only one choice, and in some counties there were no choices, and they were contracting with morticians in other counties. Similarly, the other problem is each county has a different set of how they manage. So some counties have burial plots for indigents. They've already established them from decades ago, saying if we have indigent burials, they go here. Other counties have no such thing, and they have to pay for the cost of a plot of land in their county cemetery. Some have cemetery districts. And so it really is a difficult patchwork. And so when it came down to saying, well, is it the state's responsibility to pay? Well, no, I don't think so. It really is the county's. But because of the wide cost disparity in what each county does already, this is a reimbursement. And I think it was, I believe, fair in talking with the association that deals with counties, what they could ask for reimbursement. And we weren't about to just say, hey, whatever it costs, we'll pay. But here's a set rate in statute that everybody knows. And if you, for some reason, need to be charging more to a county, you better be able to justify it, because other counties are doing it for less. And I'm sure they could do that, but now it's forcing them to do that. So I hope that's the balancer and the background better of why it's somewhat a state function, somewhat a county function, and trying to keep it as equal as we can across the board.
Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On and in support of the bill, and respectfully disagree with the good member from the center of the state who talked a couple times ago. I don't think that this piece of legislation is the state stepping in and taking over a duty or a responsibility and a financial cost necessarily of the county. Yes, we are stepping in to assist them financially, but I don't think that it's I just would not say that this bill is just completely taking over that responsibility. I think that it is fair to say that perhaps down the road, that corporations may want to take a deeper look at this and see how it's being managed, and could we manage it better? Could we do it better? Do we need to have a broader discussion about whose responsibility it is to see these things? But it's certainly been alluded to already, but keep in mind that when it comes to some of these transient folks, certain counties that have interstates going through them, that have larger arteries, are effectively seeing an unfair burden here. And so, in my home county, I asked around a little bit. I actually have a family member who was a coroner for 8 years. They had 2 of these cases in an 8-year period, and so it's just not that much of an issue. But in some of these other places, it really is, and it's starting to become a burden on the local government and on private businesses. So anyway, Madam Chairman, again, I think that it's worth taking a broader look at this issue, assuming this bill passes. But that being said, at this time, I don't think that this legislation is stepping in to make the state take over full responsibility of the issue. So thank you. On and in support.
Thank you. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Are we still on the amendment?
We are on committee of the whole amendment to House Bill 29.
Thank you. Madam Chairwoman, in terms of the testimony for the Department of Family Services, they basically give they have a list that of things that they will or will not approve. It's a reimbursement. That's something that people really need to hear, is that this is not a blank check. It is a reimbursement. So when they submit requests for things, there's certain things that they will reimburse and certain things they will not. So it's not everything that that they can get completely reimbursed for. That's part of the testimony that we received. And so through this amendment and through some of these parameters, this will allow a little bit more guidelines, and some of the phrases we love to use is sideboards on the reimbursement program and such. We've debated a lot about this. It is something that's been around. This is nothing new. It's just came out by itself. So I really encourage that that we call for the question and vote on the amendment so we can move on to the bill. Thank you.
Representative Romero Martinez.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I just wanted to make a comment. First of all, I'm on and in support of the amendment, and just wanted to thank the bringers of the bill for putting their efforts towards the amendment and the bill, bringing it back. With all due respect, even if the governor vetoes something, doesn't mean the governor's always right. And just to remind everyone that it is a corporal work of mercy for people of faith to give people a dignified burial. And thank you. I regress.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So members, there's another tradition we have in this body, and I'm going to take a little bit of a privilege here, Madam Chairman, is we don't refer to the executive of this branch with a capital G. We try to find a different way to refer to the executive or to any statewide elected, et cetera, in another manner. So you can call the individual the chief executive of the state of Wyoming. You can call the one with the first floor office on the East End, but we try not to also personalize with a capital G title, just like we do not use ourselves and our titles and names as we debate. And I apologize, Madam Chairman, it's been done several times in the context of an action that is an executive function action. And I think we need to be respectful that we are a separate Article 2, separate branch of government. And as we debate things on the floor of this House, I think it is appropriate that we keep that in mind and respect the different branches of government and the individuals who may be occupying those seats. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that. So we are on the Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 29. Seeing that there are no further questions and sensing you're ready for the question having been called, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 has passed. We are back on the bill. Speaker Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So with the bill now as we have it before us, I guess I'm going to request that the good chairman of our Corporations Committee take a hard look at the 50% division between where the money goes and then the subsequent 2-year even numbered 2-year issue, because it looks to me like we're going to have a whole lot of money piling up, counties being basically having receivables, et cetera. So I think it's something that we can look at, but I think they're both conceptually fine, but then when you combine them together, we're going to start getting a fund of money that counties are going to be out of for probably an excessive amount of time when we know we've reserved 50% of those funds. So I think it's just something to be considered as a subsequent reading amendment should this bill pass committee of the whole. And any comments that Chairman might have would be appreciated. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Chairman Swanitzer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To address that former point and also another kudos from a previous member, I have returned to be the corporation's chairman, so I did not do any work on the bill in the interim, and that 2-year window was a result of the interim committee as well as most of the bills. So I can't take a lot of credit for that. I was just trying to, try to equalize it as best I could on short notice between an existing program in the Department of Family Services and a reimbursement to the county. So I will get with the parties involved, see if we could do it on an annual basis instead of a biennial, and see what kind of issues that may cause or may help. So now that I've got through step 1, we'll see if there's a second reading amendment tomorrow, and I'll try my best.
Thank you. Further questions or discussion? Question having been called, all those in favor of Chairman Zwanitzer's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 29 do pass, please raise your hands to the screen. Opposed, same sign. I believe that House Bill 29 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 37. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 37, sponsored by Select Water, the Omnibus Water Bill Planning, an act relating to water development projects. This bill was referred to Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Blackburn, Clausen, Eklund, Fortner, Heiner, Larson, Dan, Western, Wharf, Winter. Signed, Representative Eklund, Chairman. It was re-referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kinner, Larson, Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Signed, Representative Larson, Vice Chairman.
Thank you. You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Eklund?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that Senate File 37 do pass, and I'd like to take a brief liberty. Is my sound better than it was before?
You're perfect.
Oh, you can hear me again. Then I was told I was not very loud this morning, and so the other thing I'd like to take a little bit of a liberty. The Ag Committee asked a question that we couldn't answer. We didn't have enough old institutional knowledge concerning the program. They asked, why are these two bills separated? We have two. You just worked a bill a few days ago, a couple days ago, maybe yesterday actually, Omnibus Water Bill Construction. It started in the House, and then we're working on planning, and we couldn't answer the question. Well, it got asked again in appropriations, and the director of the Water Development Office had an answer for that. Apparently, we had two agencies. One did the planning, and the other one did the construction. And then so traditionally, you started two bills, one in the Senate, one in the House. And then when the Water Development Office consolidated, it became one bill. So that's a bit of history that I thought was kind of interesting. And I would like to turn the floor management of the bill over to the chairman of the Select Water Committee from, let me think here, up in the northwest corner, not far from our great park.
And Chairman Eklund, did you move that bill? I'm sorry, if you did, I missed it.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I did.
Okay.
Right at the beginning, I got her done.
And just tell me who is going to manage this, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Oh, yes, it would be Representative Larson with a U.
Representative Larson.
Madam Chairman, thank you. If you can hear me, that's just great. Just a bit ago, I sent out two emails. One was the notebook that we usually send out on this omnibus water bill planning. And then I also sent out another email that's a cheat sheet on the bill itself and describes where the dollars are being proposed to go. And so with that, I would ask you to open up the cheat sheet. It should be one page, and we'll start going through that. I think that's probably the best way to go. If you start up at the top of it, we start with new development plans, planning for new developments, and they come out of Water Development Account 1, and they total they total $1.359 million. I'm trying to look at them. One's a watershed study on the Hobeck River. 4 of them are master plans, and you can see where those are. And then one of them's a Lake Hattie Reservoir full utilization study. This is an issue in the Albany County with Lake Hattie. I think it's near Laramie. They're having issues with being able to keep it full, and having problems with the neighbors that are near that that lake. And so they're trying to figure out what they can do about it. Currently, I think they may be in a lawsuit, and they're worried that they won't be able to keep it full. It is a concern because it's used for as a safety when we start getting the runoffs from the mountains. The next part of this, the new development is UW Water Research Program. They'll be doing some water research projects. I think there's 2 of them. There may be 3. And then from there we go to level 2 projects that are new development. And you can see that those are feasibility studies for different parts of our great state. Some of them are for cities or potable water, and some are for, I think they're all for potable water, to tell you the truth. Next, we go to level 1 projects and rehabilitation. On this one, we have a Highline Irrigation District Master Plan. I forgot to tell you how much the other one was for. The new development was for $586,000 out of water development account number 1. This one will be out of water development account 2, and the Highland Irrigation District Master Plan was for $192,000. The next item was one that was taken out in the Senate Ag Committee, and after discussion with the parties there, it was kind of decided that they weren't sure if it was in the right category or if it was the right entity that was bringing the proposal. So they decided to delete this, and the deletion is $242,000. I believe the city has decided they'll either take it up themselves or figure something else out. It actually was dealing with water rights and a lot of issues on if people are using the water correctly, but it went through the city, and it was a couple creeks that went through the city that they're having troubles with. So the total on that part of the projects is $192,000. The next level 2 projects are about amendments. And the biggest one for this whole planning bill is for the LaPrelle Irrigation District Rehabilitation Phase 2 project. And they're asking for $4.3 million. And if you look in the blue book later on tonight, you'll see the dam and what it looks like. It's in need of repair terribly, and I think they're limited on how high they can fill it. But the big issue is the worry that it may collapse, and it would be devastating to Douglas. So we're trying to figure out how we can get that dam repaired. Maybe go out and try to find federal money and such. So they're still studying the dam and trying to decide what we can do. The other 3 projects, well, it's actually 4 of them, are 3-year time extensions to the projects. I can't remember when these projects were started. We went through that this morning. I didn't write it down, but they're having trouble getting them finished. And so there's no money involved with that. The next item is and so the total of that category is $4.3 million. The next section is section 6 in the bill, and we're asking to be able to move $4.3 million from water development account number 1 to water development account number 2 to deal with the La Prairie Irrigation District issue. So the total planning bill is for $6.437 million. And with that, I would stop and see what questions there may be.
Thank you. Appreciate the sheet. Follow up. Chairman Olson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm trying to work through the projects that they're having a hard. I think you said there's some projects that they're having a hard time getting finished, and so we're extending those. And maybe you can. I just lost my place on what section I was in. I think it was section 2 or section 3, maybe. Anyway, I understood that there's no appropriation or no additional appropriation with the extension of those projects. But how does that mean that there is no expense with the carrying forward of the project from those projects from their original deadlines, or are there still expenses that are just being absorbed by the agency? Because I mean, my gut would tell me that if you have a project and it's supposed to be done at a particular point in time, and then you have to carry it, you carry it past its original deadline. Usually that's because there's been hiccups in the project, and hiccups usually cost money. So I appreciate that there's not a fund attached to it, but I'm trying to understand if that's just being absorbed. Thank you.
Representative Larson. I've lost him.
Sorry about that. I was thinking somebody else was going to ask questions or help with this. Quite a few of these have to do with maybe right-of-way issues, or they may be dealing with the federal government. I could look up these and while you're asking more questions and be more specific.
Okay, we'll take questions then, and if you want to note the questions, Representative Larson, we'll just roll on through the questions, and then if that would be your preference.
Madam Chairman, that would be okay, and I'm hoping some of the rest of the Ag Committee will speak up also.
Okay, Representative Larson's calling for a lifeline. Representative Summers, you had the next question.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. And this is, just kind of a broader question. Are we about done doing the watershed studies? I see there's one, between my county and county to the north and the county to the west, but it seems like we've been doing that for a while, and I'm wondering if we're about to the end of those studies. And I know those studies are used to help do the justification for small water projects, but are we about done with those? Thank you.
Okay, Chairman Eklund.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I can help with a few of those questions. There's no appropriation on those previous projects because a couple things have happened. We've already either appropriated money for them, or the combination of what we've appropriated with what the federal government will pick up. Some of them are Bureau of Reclamation dams. Fontenelle would be one. Past one is Sandy. I'm thinking there were more questions of studies. I think we're kind of on the tail end of studies, from what I understand. And they are fairly important if you're going to get into building small water projects, which the state has been doing for quite a while. And I hope the chairman of Select Water has written down the other questions, but those are a couple, and I hope I've answered them.
Thank you. Representative Larson, Chairman Larson.
Yes, Madam Chairman. I do want to say a little bit more on the ones that have extensions. The dollars are there. They're just they're needing more time to keep going on the projects. The Fontenelle one actually is working with the federal government. I hope I can. Well, I don't know. It's the department that works with water on the western part of the country. they're working on NEPA task orders, and one of the deals they're trying to do on that Fontanelle is get more storage in there. And it's actually, we've been talking about this for quite a few years, two or three, and the hope is we may get like 81,000 acre feet extra if we could rip wrap the bottom of the reservoir on the dam. And so they're going through the process to try to figure out how they could do that, and hopefully not empty the dam, but trying to figure out how low they'd have to get it to rip wrap the bottom portion. The Glendo one is working with the federal water division on the eastern side of the country, and it deals with the timing of releases in the Glendo reservoir, and trying to make it so they don't have to pass water through there, trying to take care of flooding and stuff like that. But they're having troubles working on that. And Alkali Creek is actually, they're working on their final design and working with the contractors, the engineering firms to, it needs a little bit more extension. So hopefully that helps.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple quick questions. First one being, is any of this money slated for the West Branch Dam project? And if so, have the criteria previously placed on that project been met before the money's been allocated?
Chairman Larson, do you want to take that now?
I'm not sure if I can. I'm going to need help with some of the others if they have memory there on that.
Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To answer the question about the watersheds, the water staff has estimated that we're approximately 80 to 90% complete of doing the watersheds throughout the state of Wyoming.
Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I might add a little granularity to the question from the good representative that originally started in the southwest part of the state and transplanted to the southeast part of the state. The Fontanelle Dam, in order to rip wrap the lower part of that dam, was hugely expensive, in the order of $15 to $16 million. And the owner of the dam came back and said that it may be a better opportunity to put that riprap down if there was a catastrophic drawdown of the dam due to a drought. And I sincerely hope that this year is not the year that we draw that down to where we could put the riprap down, but it would be tremendously less expensive if we could do that without it being below water. So I'm sure that's part of the reason they're continuing to study that, but it may happen at any time the way we're going this winter right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Eklund.
Madam Chairman, some of this takes a lot of time, and I can only emphasize the hoops you have to jump through to get a reservoir done or rebuilt. And the last speaker talked to that. Hopefully it isn't the year that we would be the drawdown area, because usually it's already drawn down to the south of us in this drainage and critically drawn down. The West Branch Dam project was mentioned, and it isn't familiar to me, so I don't think, unless other members of the committee can remember that project, it could be in very preliminary stages, and water development hasn't discussed it with us, but the representative asking that question wanted to email us or the director of water development. You could find out more about it that way, I think.
Thank you. Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'm happy to try and answer that. As to the issue of the West Fork project, I was busy this past fall and was unable to attend the last select water meeting or two. But anyway, not that I see, I do not see that project is named in this particular bill. To the new members of the legislature, and as a reminder for everyone, the West Fork project is a proposed structure down near the Colorado border, and it would be a substantial reservoir if ever built. We've been it's been a topic of discussion for a few years now, and the long and short of it is that there's a lot of controversy over how much Wyoming would kick into that project as opposed to how much benefit it would receive out of it. And so it is the reason the past couple of years, over the last 2 or 3 years, that that this and the construction bill had some hangups. And so anyway, someone on the committee, please correct me if I'm wrong, but going down through this list, I don't see the West Fork project named in here. And so, and to that point, if I recall, we, as of last year at the conclusion of the 2020 session, did leave enough money in there for the project to continue forward, at least in a limited capacity. And because it still has a long way to go in its planning, because we're talking about a couple of different federal agencies who are continuing to have to sign off on things and so on and so forth. So at some point, if it were the desire of Wyoming, which at this point with our financial situation is very bleak, if we signed off a full check on this, it would move forward more quickly. But anyway, long story short, it's a project that continues to bump along, even though its ultimate future is seriously in question. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Madam Minority Floor Leader, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got just more of a general question for the good chair of the committee as well as the committee members. We're looking through the bill. I'm not seeing anything in it right now that is about aquifer protection. And certainly in my community, that doing aquifer protection is a priority. We want to keep our drinking water as clean and pure as possible, something that we all, I think, value in the state. And so we've talked some about starting to include some of those projects, and I'm curious about the discussion that the committee has had. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Chairman Larson, would you like to answer that question?
The only thing I could probably say on that is maybe in the watershed studies, they have tackled that issue a little bit, but I can't specifically recall that, and maybe some of the others do.
Chairman Eklund.
Madam Chairman, to the minority floor leader, so that's something that's generally taken care of by the DEQ, and water development produces water. And we are involved with studies concerning the aquifer. We have had university studies that improve the water quality to some extent, but usually we're involved in water production and water storage and whatnot with this particular water development office and commission and select water.
Thank you. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. And maybe I missed it, but I don't know that anybody answered my question, which was, are we at the end of these watershed studies, or do they have more of them to go, and kind of where are we at along the line of finishing these up? Thank you.
Representative Simpson, would you like to answer that?
I'd be glad to. The water development staff has approximated that 80 to 90% of the entire state has been covered with previous watershed studies. So we still have a few more to go, but we're close to the end.
Thank you. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd like to ask, can we reappropriate funds and cut back as everyone else across the state is cutting, And how can we be good stewards? And are we doing that with these projects? And are the funds with these funds, and are they truly necessary at this time?
Chairman Larson, would you like to answer that?
Yes,
Or-
Madam Chairwoman. I want to kind of explain the process. The projects are sent in by the individual entities. They usually come in May. They're vetted by the office. The 10-member commission, I think it's 10-member, goes through those. They have a priority list. They do get short in funds in all the categories, and so they do pick the ones that are most needed. After it goes through the commission, goes to the select water, and hopefully that helps a little bit. If you go through your notebook, you can see how the programs are funded, and I can go through those if you would like. They come out of the mineral severance tax, I think. I hope I said that right. But I'll let some more questions come.
Chairman Eklund, did you want to add something to that?
Madam Chairman, yes, so the projects are bid out in a competitive bid process. One thing I have noticed is with certain districts and municipalities and whatnot, the commission has started getting fairly stern on what the contribution is to of the water users back to their funds, so that they can match usually it's a 1/3, 2/3 to the state. Boy, asking that question about do we have to do it now? They've tried to prioritize all of the water systems. We're completing one. Gosh, without using names that aren't in here, I can't really. I better be quiet. But I can talk about the La Prelle Reservoir. If that one isn't repaired, it's a dangerous dam the way it is. It will eventually fail. They're only filling it about a third to a half full as it is. And it's needing immediate attention. Most of the infrastructure with water is 100 or more years old, and it's time to rebuild. And we are short on funding, but this is not a very good time to cut back on it. I've made my speech about essential things, and I think water's one of the essential things for the state of Wyoming. So hope that helps.
Thank you.
Answer those.
And Representative Simpson, did you have a question, or did you want to add, also reply to Representative Duncan?
May I reply, Madam Chairman?
Please.
I think it's important for you to note that the Water Development Commission group, our staff, actually did volunteer to take the agency cuts along with the other groups. They're not generally funded from the general fund, but they volunteered it and they've done that. It really is a function of where our priorities are in the state. And the association that supports water development and water use has a big giant banner that they put up at their convention every year for decades. It says, "Water is Wyoming's gold." And as we look around the state and see places and locations that we have water, we're able to flourish and develop livelihoods and communities and businesses around them. And in areas where we don't have water, you can see that we just have sagebrush. And so I would submit to the body respectfully that water is very, very important to our state, and we should maintain a priority here. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Duncan, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chairman. I just had one quick follow-up. Should we reappropriate some of this money to a more critical state function? I know water is gold, but we have a lot of critical needs. And so my question is, some of these projects, maybe they could be reappropriated to a more critical need or issue.
Representative Simpson, I'm going to allow you to answer that.
Again, it's, we would be glad to find projects in your district or anyone, I don't mean your specifically, anyone's district that we could postpone or cancel. I think we need to stay strong with the water improvement project. I think that pays dividends to us.
Thank you. Representative Larson, did you have something to add?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, I do want to add a little bit that like we said, water is vital to us. Rehabilitating our infrastructure is just so important. And a majority of this water, you hate to say, well, I don't hate to say it, is for potable water. You know, a lot of it goes to irrigation districts or conservation districts or such, but a good majority goes to all of us so we can have good potable water out in our rural areas, especially lately. And so that's that kind of helps that. The funding comes, like I maybe had mentioned before, from the mineral royalty severance accounts, or the income we get from that. And it's on the first $155 million. There's a percentage that goes to each account, and I could go through those with you if you want. The first one gets 19.3 million a year. Account number 2 gets like 3.25 million a year, and the dam and reservoirs account gets about $250,000 a year. And it's just vital that these projects continue, I think.
And Chairman Eklund, before I move to Representative Yin, did you have something you wanted to add as well?
We haven't really mentioned the other benefits of the reservoir system in Wyoming, the recreation and the tourism and whatnot. So we're not just drinking water and watering crops. It's there's more to this than that. And then there's flood control. I'll kind of go into that a little bit. I don't think there's a reservoir in the entire system that hasn't paid for itself just in saving property from flood damage. They're vital. We're either flooding or we're dried out, and I've said that before. They recharge aquifers and springs all the way up and down the system. So maintaining all of this is important.
Thank you. Representative Yin.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. I might have missed this from the beginning of the presentation, and if so, I do apologize. I just wanted to know what the Senate Standing Committee changed, if the presenter or any other member of the committee know what has changed from the Senate side. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Representative Larson, are you prepared to answer that at this time?
Yeah, I could. Yes,
Okay.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. The Lander Ditches Rehabilitation Project was taken out by the Senate in the Ag Committee. It was decided that the $242 continuation of the study, they weren't sure if they should be in account number 2 as a rehabilitation, or was it a new project? But a lot of it dealt with water right searches, trying to determine are the ditches being used correctly? But the city of Lander, I hope I can say that because I just did, has said that they would take that on themselves.
Thank you. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you. And really probably for the good representative from Star Valley who's worked in this area a lot. I think most states though also use, there's a couple federal programs that provide loans, like I can't remember my failing memory, but it's like the clean water revolving accounts. And then there's one for, basically potable water and non-potable sources. A lot of states use those to the max, in Wyoming, we haven't had to in the last 4 years because we've been able to just cash flow it on these severance tax dollars below the cap, which are folks, our severance taxes come in, and sometime in the 90s, they put a cap on them at 155. So that cap and water is below that cap. I don't know what the percent, it's like 23 or some percent per year. Actually got it. Yeah, it's 23 million a year, 15%. And so that money never changes. I mean, of all the revenues in the state, that never changes. Water's going to get us 23 million a year, whether the oil's at 25 or oil's at 75. And whereas the rest of the state will ride a little bit. But so my first question then is really, how come we're not like some of these other states and use some of these federal programs to really build them cheaply? Or is that a possibility? And then maybe the next question would be for the representative from Park County. How much money is left over? I can't really, maybe it's on I don't think it's on the goldenrod, but there's some money left over, right? You don't spend it all every year. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Representative Simpson, are you prepared to answer that first question?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The state revolving loan program is strictly for municipalities and drinking water systems, water and sewer districts. And that program has had a significant surge in the last 2 years because that's federal funds that come into the state. They've had the loan forgiveness program, which means it's a grant. And so they're really, really capitalizing on that. You'll find in this list of water projects that is before us today, most of those entities are pulling the grant from us, the 67% grant, and they're going to the state revolving loan fund and pulling the loan portion from it. Depending on their average income, they could get loan forgiveness of some of that or all of it. But that program is drying up, but we are, through the Water Development Commission, is pushing a lot more of our municipalities into that program to take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Representative Larson?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, thank you. I do want to talk a little bit about irrigation districts also. They usually get around a 67% grant. I think that's what the number is, and then they have to get the rest as a loan. In the southwest part of the corner, sometimes it's 50-50 because they are finding some federal funds that have to deal with the Colorado River and its issues with salt. And so they're doing quite a bit of the projects down there at a 50-50. I did want to mention, we did get some numbers on what will be remaining at the end of this fiscal year. In account 1, there'll be 9.1 million. Count 2, there'll be 1 million. And in count 3, there'll be 25 million. And just a reminder that account 3 is where we're hoping to build our dams. And we've got quite a few of those in progress.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chairwoman, just one follow-up with a good representative about one. So the previous chief executive, we had the 10 and 10 plan. It's real aggressive. We had several $100 million in Water 3. And maybe you can update us on where we're at on that. Have we built any of those dams, or we just use those money on Water 2 projects, or what have we done with that Water 3 money over the years?
Representative Larson?
I'm probably going to need a little help on that one. We are in the process of 3 dams at least. I'm trying to get confirmation from the rest of the guys here. But probably Fontenelle is one of the biggest ones that we're working on, but that is riprap. But in my area, there's 2 in the good chairwoman's area.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Representative or Chairman Eklund.
Madam Chairman, so we've completed, if I understand things correctly, we've completed the Big Sandy expansion. That was part of the 10 and 10. We're in the process with Fontenelle and between permitting and the bureau that actually owns a dam, our costs are not as high as you might think. And some of the money has already been appropriated, so it doesn't show up. It's in previous session laws. There's a dam above Worland that is in the planning stages. We're rebuilding a dam called the Big Piney. I think maybe it's a Middle Piney. I believe it's a Middle Piney reservoir that had silted in, and it's in the process of being rebuilt. The money's been appropriated for, I believe, most, if not all, of those projects. Then the new one that we're looking at is that Laprelle Dam. And the reason it's critical that we try to keep these reservoirs up is once they fall apart and break, you start from scratch trying to get the permitting process done. It takes twice as long, costs twice as much. Part of the cost and the reason we should try to be expeditious in some of what we're doing. I remember when I first got here, I learned about the Pathfinder modification, and the former speaker would remember a lot about that and what a big deal it was. Our cost, Bureau Rec paid for the majority of that. Our cost was only about $13.5 million. And I believe it was less than $2 million, and that cost was actual construction. The rest of it was permitting and regulation and all of the hoops we had to jump through to get that expansion done. But anyway, that's part of why these costs are fairly high, but we've had the foresight to start on them before, and some of that money is already appropriated.
Thank you. Chairman Swanitzer, you've been so patient, but I believe Representative Simpson might want to just follow up on the question from Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a fun subject. We could talk about this all day long. So you can tell I have a passion for engineering and water projects. The previous governor issued a challenge at the beginning of his first tenure, and that was to build 10 dams in the next 10 years. And so the water world jumped into that and really worked hard to do as many dams as possible. Interesting enough, we have 16 dam projects going on right now. 16, 2 are under construction, and 2 are very close to being completed in construction. We've discovered that the olden days of where you just throw a dam in is no longer existence. Federal government regulations have really, really made dams very, very difficult to do. But we're in the process. We're a little concerned about this account number 3. It has so few dollars in it, and one of these dams costs $50 to $80 million to build a significant dam. And so we're going to have to find some other funding, obviously, to make that happen. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Chairman Swanitzer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And my question's probably 15 minutes old now, but going back to the bill, we talked about that we really need potable water. So my main concern is the entire level 2 funding of, I think what we're adding $4.3 million is for an irrigation district. So if you could let me know if they're providing potable water and to who. And then I heard reference that we need to pass the bill because it benefits recreation and tourism. But last I knew in Wyoming water law, tourism is not a beneficial use, nor is recreation. So just double check, is that true that we can use water projects for recreation or tourism means, or does it still have to be a beneficial use? And is any of the 4.3 million actually going to potable water as conceived in this bill?
Thank you. Representative Larson.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. Yes, though our reservoirs are used for recreation. I would assume if you're doing recreation, you can say that the tourists may come and do the same. I think there's a lot of reservoirs that have boats on them. And the next question was on the 4.3 million to Laprelle Irrigation District. That is, I don't know if they get drinking water out of there. I don't live in that area. It is just a vital dam that is very important to the irrigation district, obviously, and it's in dire need and almost, I mean, they can't fill it like it was said before because they're worried that it will collapse. And it's a major dam. When you look in the notebook, you'll be pretty impressed. It's a different type of design and it's got issues, but hopefully that helps.
All right, further questions regarding Senate File 37? Seeing none and sensing your
Question.
Thank you. Question having been called. Thank you. Question having been called. All those in favor, please raise your hand to the screen. Opposed, same sign. Senate File 37 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Our next bill for consideration is House Bill 49. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 49, sponsored by Appropriations, Agency Fee Revisions, and Act relating to agency fees. This bill was referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representative Kinner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stith, Walters. Signed, Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
Thank you, reading clerk. Before I proceed, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, the only comment I'm going to have is this is the last bill for the evening, and we can make it go as long or short as y'all like. This is the last one for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Nicholas? I hear your laughter, but I don't see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rise and report. So with the recommendation that Senate File 49 do pass, and I will turn the explanation over to several of my colleagues because we kind of break it down into pieces. But who's going first? I forgot. Representative Larson, thank you.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And members of the House, this year in appropriations in this committee, as we've been looking at the financial status of the state revenues and agencies and looked at reductions that agencies are going to make, we have repeatedly been asked and ask ourselves to look at ways where we can review and see where we can make cuts. And in this process, we also said, are there areas that we have programs that charge fees where those fees are not adequate to cover the cost of the programs. So our staff put together a huge list of all agency fees, and we were tasked to review that and make recommendations back to whether we felt that there should be some fee changes or not. And for you new members, on appropriations, each member is assigned different agencies. And so today, when we present the bill, it'll be by those people in the agencies that they're familiar with, and we'll have that discussion. But it reminded me, Madam Chairman, just a little bit of when I was in business, there were times when we'd have economic swings and all of a sudden we'd see our revenue was not what we were used to. And we would go back and look at expenditures and look and see why our revenues weren't as much. And oftentimes it was simple things like not billing out third-party expenditures or not billing out enough for third-party expenditures. And you'd kind of say, gee, I thought office staff, you were taking care of that. And they would look at you and say, well, it got away from us. And so we would make those changes. And that's kind of the exercise we went through here today. You're going to see, and I'll try to answer some of the questions that I heard relevant to some of these things, because we talked about fees in corporations earlier this morning for modernizing notary laws, and then we talked about reinsurance and modernizing that. And so what you're going to see is you're going to see some of these fees that are established in statute, and we modify them in statute and keep them there. There are some that are saying that we're going to remove from statute and give the agency the ability to adjust those by rule. If you'll take a look at your fiscal note, you'll see an excellent breakdown of how those fees play out. Some go to the general fund. Most of them come back into the agencies, and some go to special accounts like the corrective action account, which takes care of leaking underground storage tanks. The overall revenue that this generates isn't enormous, but some of these haven't been changed since as we get into DEQ. Our mining permits haven't been changed since 1973. That's the year I got my driver's license, was 1973, and much to the happiness of the local law enforcement who had been giving me a free ride for a couple of years. But so the other part of this is when you sit down and you determine whether to make adjustments to these fees. It wasn't throw a dart at the wall and see where it sticks or try to pin the tail on the donkey. We reached out to the agencies and to providers like in the Department of Health, some of these medical providers. We said, where are these fees? Are these reasonable? And we base these adjustments on the conversations that we had. And I would share with you, Madam Chairman, that when we heard this bill in joint appropriations, we didn't hear any opposition to it, nor did we when we heard it in the House appropriations just recently. So, Madam Chairman, with your permission, we'll start out, and what we'd like to do is I've got several agencies, and we're going to skip around members of the committee depending on the committees that or the agencies that we represent, and it'll go from me to Representative, my colleague from down in the city where the springs are in the rocks, and then my good desk mate in appropriations that lives kind of by that rock where there's Independence, and we'll pass these on and then come back if the House would bear with us. And when we come back around, I just about offended somebody again when we circle, which you see. So when we finish up, we will try to take your questions at that time. So if you would join me then, and let's turn to page 3 in the bill, and it makes a reference to 14.3-214. And this is the central registry. This is where people who are looking at potential employees would want to get a criminal record and see if they're on the central registry. They pay a fee, and that is supposed to cover the cost of that program. And in this one, that's administered by the Department of Family Services, and we're going to take that out of statute. It's a $10. You'll see a strike on page 4 where we delete through that $10 charge, and we allow the agency to make that determination by rule to cover the costs of the program. Then if you'll move on over to page 5, and we get into healthcare facilities. And these fees haven't changed since 1994. And there's quite a broad variety of them. And on page 5, in that language, you'll see a little disclaimer that says, if the healthcare facility isn't named in section G, then they have the ability to make a licensing fee for that agency, or not that agency, but that facility. And so then if you'll go on to page 6, and we start getting down into these healthcare facilities, you'll see that we put the adult daycare facility at $250. It was at $100. Same with the adult foster care, it was $100. We changed that to $250. Ambulatory surgical centers, $500. It was $100. Had a conversation with them. They says Wyoming's a pretty cheap place to do these type of things, and felt that that was reasonable. The assisted living facilities that we have around the state, we structured that in depending on the capacity. If they had 25 beds, it's $250. If it's a capacity of 25 but less than 50, we go to $250. And if it has over 50 beds, it's $1,000. Again, talked with those people. They understood the position of the state and understood what we were doing. Birthing centers had the flexibility of 100 to 500. We just made it 500. The boarding homes was 100 to 500. We changed that from 500 to 750. Critical access hospitals was 100 to 500. We just put it at 500. The renal dialysis center, same thing. Freestanding diagnosis centers was the same thing. It was 100 to 100. We brought it to 500. Freestanding emergency centers, visited with them. The 500 was reasonable. Home health agency was 100. We raised it to 150. Hospice facilities that we may have around the state was 100. We changed it to 250. Hospitals was 100 to 500. Changed that to $1,000 a year, which is still less than surrounding states. Intermediate care facility was $100. We changed that to $250. Critical medical assisted facility, I didn't know what that was. We don't have them anymore. It was before we had critical access. That may be an amendment to delete that, but we changed it to $250. Nursing facilities, we do the same thing. We structure it based on the number of beds, and it ranges from if you had 25 beds or less at $250 up to if you have more than 50 beds that you're $1,000. Psychiatric hospital is $1,000. Rehabilitation facility, 500. Rehabilitation hospital was 1 to 5, and we just put it at 5. And then we have that language in H that talks about additional fees imposed under the subsection. If it changes its name, there's a name change fee. If you would then switch, we'll skip through the Department of Agriculture and go to page 10. These are fees in the Department of Environmental Quality. These were set in statute, and the question is why didn't you move them out? Because they hadn't been changing them, and we felt we needed to leave them in. If you would go to page 12, not all of the divisions got it, but in air quality, we changed the fees on new source revenue, worked with the department and industry. I asked questions on that. It was at it hadn't been changed since 2009, was at 464. We changed it to 500, and then we changed the hourly rate associated with acting on the application from $58 to $75, which is, I think, relevant to associated costs in the profession. In fact, maybe cheaper than an hourly rate in profession. Relocation of portable sources like a compressor station or something of that nature. Gas plant, maybe moving a vessel or something that emits a source that went from 100 to 150. Mining permits, as I mentioned, that's the bottom of page 12. Hadn't been changed since 1973. It was $100. We changed it to $200. And then on page 14, we changed the fee for the application for mining from $25 to $150. Remember, this hasn't been changed since 73. To explore for minerals by dozing, I don't even know if they'll let you do that much anymore. You used to see it all the time, but that is from $25 to $250. Now we go into the solid waste and hazardous materials. We have around the state those commercial entities that sell petroleum products and have storage tanks underground. We had been assessing them an annual fee of $500 per tank for inspection, and then that money goes into the corrective action account, which takes care of leaking underground storage tanks issues. We made this applicable to underground and above ground. The question was asked in committee, so what about the me personally, if I've got a 500-gallon storage tank, or our chairman of the day on the ranch, she has probably a couple of those. That does not apply. It's to these commercial entities that sell petroleum products. Then we go to the DFS again. This is in another section. One was in Title 14, and this is in Title 35 for the same thing on the central registry. So, Madam Chairman, if that's kind of my run through the agencies that I have, and I'd like to turn the time over to representative from down south, where they have a great hamburger place in the city of where the rocks have springs in them, and he can talk about corrections.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And before we move on to Representative Stith, if Chairman Nicholas, if I could get you to just move this bill once again. I believe you might have referred to it as a Senate file bill, and it's actually a House bill. Did we lose him?
So, Madam Chairman,
Mr.
I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with recommendation that House Bill 49 do pass.
Thank you, sir. And Representative Stith.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much. Members of the body. So on page, the department that deals with our inmates and supervises probationers and parolees, the section related to that starts on page 2 of House Bill 49. What this provides for is that anyone who is on probation or parole would be assessed a fee of $25 a month. And then if they have to undergo drug screening, they pay an extra $10 a month for that. If the probationer or parolee decides they don't like being on probation here in Wyoming and they want to compact out to a different state, they pay a $100 fee for that. So the fiscal note, I think, is really instructive on this one, because about 2/3 of the money that this bill generates comes out of this department, out of these fees. So $25 doesn't sound like very much, but this department supervises over 6,400 probationers and parolees in the state. So it's a big number. The number from the $25 fee month comes to $744,000 per year. If you do the arithmetic, it'll be curious. What they've done is assume that not every probationer and parolee is going to pay like clockwork. In fact, they're assuming about a 40% collection rate, okay? Which brought us to kind of the most interesting policy issue in this bill, from my point of view, is that, so what happens if you've got half of your people not paying their bill that's due? What do you do with them? Do you revoke their probation? You know, that would not be a smart move in my view, because if you did that, then you'd be trading a $25 a month fee for the $40,000 per year cost of sending them back to a correctional facility. So we questioned the director of this department about that, who assured us that the intent here of how this will be administered will not be to drive up revocations. The idea will be using some of the adjustment reinvestment reform bills that we passed in the last couple of years. There are other sanctions they could use. So this $1 million that all these fees generate each year, where does it go? It goes to the general fund. What would this department like to do with the money? This department would like to be able to use the money to pay for or make up for some of the cuts that were made in field services and offender management. If you look at the budget books, this department took, it's a relatively significant department. Its budget was cut $23 million in total. Field services were cut of that. inside that, field services were cut $5.4 million. This offender management program, all told, cost a little under $2 million. So rough numbers, if the collections come in at the rate expected, these fees would be about enough to pay for offender management, that is supervising the probationers and parolees. And with that, I would stand for questions.
Okay, do we want to take questions, or did we want to move on to Representative?
Madam Chair, I would turn the discussion over for the next department to the member from House District 38.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Representative Walters.
Walters, proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We are now on the bottom of page 9 and the top of page 10, discussing Department of Agriculture increase in fees for licensing of new and renewal permanent food establishments, as well as temporary food establishments in the state of Wyoming. And so this fee on a new license, it increases the fee from $100 to $200. On a temporary, or excuse me, on an annual renewal, it increases it from $50 to $100. And on a temporary food establishment license, it increases it from $25 to $50. I will note that all of the increase, which is a doubling of each of those, is deposited in the general fund versus in the fund within the department. And so the reason that the committee took this on and thought this was an adequate amount and a fair time to do this is these fees were put in place in about 2000, so they're almost 20 years old and have not been changed or altered since that time. The estimated revenue that this will generate for the general fund is in the neighborhood of $280,000. So while it's not significant, it is, or hugely significant, it is just a change to bring it current with the times. The cost of inflation has increased, and so this really just brings it in line with closer to what might be an inflationary increase. And that is what took place within the department that regulates these. So with that, I think we've wrapped up the bill, and I would turn it over to Representative Larson, excuse me, the good representative from the land of the Groundhog Day, for a summary before questions.
Okay. I did see you have a committee member who raised his hand. I wondered if Representative Schwartz wanted to contribute to the walking the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. No, I am a commenter. I don't want to jump line.
Okay, all right. Well, if Vice Chairman Larson is ready, they are lined up with questions, and I believe Representative Gray was the first with his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We'd entertain those questions.
Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I've never understood the concept on this. I mean, we have a deficit, and we created a sub-account in LISRA to help backfill the deficit. And then we do these fee increases every year, and the flows never accrue into that sub-account to backfill the deficit. Instead, they accrue to reduce the amount of the reductions within those agencies, and they've been able to withstand those reductions. And so mine is a more holistic question. Why wouldn't you flow these new revenues into a sub-account to backfill the deficit? And I think of an analogy. I mean, when there's a hole in a ship, you don't do an improvement in another part of the ship. You try to plug the hole. And I've never understood these from 30,000 feet up. And that's my question. Thank you.
Vice Chairman Larson.
So, Madam Chairman, I think our approach with this is responding to statutes as they are written. You know, that may be a consideration that we would want to consider for an interim bill, is to look at all of these fees and just funnel them all back into the general fund and use them as that. But as these fees that we address now, there are some that go to the general fund, can be in general fund. I don't think, Madam Chairman, I think is arguable, does the same thing because that's where we're having a deficit. We don't need a sub account to put it into. If it comes to the general fund, that helps solve the deficit problem.
And some of these do that, but some of them are designed like the tank inspection is designed to offset costs in the leaking underground storage tank program that would then require general funds to take care of. So the end of the day, I think we were just responding to as they are currently structured in statute.
Thank you. Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To the good bringer of the bill, or any one of them that wants to respond to this. So if I heard testimony correctly here, all the agencies were okay with these tax increases or fee increases that we like to call them. Did your committee talk to any citizens who are actually at the end of the day going to be the ones that pay these increases? And did any citizens at all give their weigh in and give their opinion on this? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Madam
Vice
Chairman.
Chairman Larson. Yes.
And as I alluded to earlier in my comments, when we had public comment for this in joint appropriations and again in House appropriations, we did not have anybody sign up to give public comment for or in opposition of the fee increases, nor did I personally, some of my colleagues may have, but I did not receive any emails or other communication. I will, however, tell you that when I was sitting at my kitchen table and looking at these fees, just because of my involvement with professions in healthcare and from being a legislator and likewise with the Department of Environmental Quality and DFS, I reached out to those people in associations and running those facilities, and most of I would say all of the fees that we brought forth, they felt were reasonable increases. We heard from agencies, as we pointed out, and they were fine with them as well. So we didn't hear public comment. Invited, as you well know, how that works. But again, would just reiterate that I reached out to entities associated with the healthcare professions and fuel deliveries to see if those were reasonable approaches, and felt that they were.
Thank you. Representative Fortner.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I got to agree with the fine representative from Sheridan County. It's a poor time to be raising taxes on the citizens and the hardworking people of Wyoming. If you could have did this 10 years ago, I think it went over a lot better. I'm not for this, not one little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Washut.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And a question probably for the good lawyer from the Southwest. Two questions with regards to these offender fees and so forth. Number one, not all agencies have fee revenue possibilities. So when we allow an agency to retain additional fee money, does that not disproportionately impact those departments that took cuts that don't have fee programs that might be able to backfill for some of their cuts? And so the impact would be disparate between agencies. And my second question is, while 40% of the offenders are not paying, there is a provision, as I understand it, where if the fee causes an undue hardship on an offender, that can be waived by the department. Do we have an idea of how many offenders have that fee waived because of inability to pay?
Representative Stiff.
Madam Chairman, thank you for the questions. With respect to the first question, the way this is structured right now is that this agency doesn't get any special benefit from imposing these fees. The money may be collected by the department, but it is remitted to the general fund. And so the agency is on the same equal footing as any other state agency with respect to its funding, because if it wants a funding increase, it would have to get that approved by the legislature. So the money doesn't go into some special revenue account that only the director of that particular department controls. It goes to the general fund. So I think there's not a concern of any sort of undue benefits to that specific agency. With respect to the compliance rate, the estimates are really more conservative, and I may have misspoken the first time. The estimate is that only 40% will pay and 60% won't. So who knows what the collection rate will actually be. It could be better than that, could be lower than that. This is a brand new fee for Wyoming. And so we don't have a track record here. The director said that he did call to other jurisdictions that do have such fees to find out what their experience has been. The phrase about financial hardship and whether you can have the fee waived or not, it's the way it's drafted, it's pretty flexible, right? But because the total fee revenue is such a small, low percentage, less than half of what the face amount would be if everybody paid like clockwork every month, it seems that the projection of revenue that will be generated is conservatively low.
Thank you. Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I am on and for House Bill 49. As you probably realize, as was mentioned, I serve on the committee that brought this bill to the floor. And we spent actually probably 2 years working on this, as we have recognized that so many of the existing fees in the state, and these are essentially fees for services, were outdated and actually were not even covering the costs of providing the service, which in many cases I believe is inappropriate. However, I will take exception to one part of this bill, and that is the one my colleague from the Southwest corner was just discussing, the first section of it, which is statute 713-407. And I have two issues with this. The first is I think it is probably not good policy to start requiring parolees and probationers to have to pay fees for the costs of what they are required to be doing, be they just the services they are going to as probationers and parolees, drug screenings, transferring if they have to move to another location. These are not people who have necessarily a great amount of disposable income. And I understand that there are provisions for waiving the fee. It is not clear how that will be determined, what right of appeal exists. I could go on at length, but because the majority floor leader said that the longer I talk, the longer we have to wait for dinner, I will stop on that. My second concern is that all the other provisions in this bill are with existing fees. But in this case, we are creating new policy. And I do not think in a bill that is about agency fees should be creating new policies without having a discussion. I believe this should probably have gone through the Judiciary Committee. It is my intention to bring a second reading amendment to deal with these problems. But as I said, I am on and for House Bill 49. Thank you.
Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm also on and for this bill. And the particular area that I want to discuss is one that what I know most about, and that is the healthcare facility fees. So back in 2017, I brought a bill, which was not successful, but to raise some of the licensing fees. Because as I did research on this, I found that there was absolutely no way that the cost of what we were providing was covered by the fee. And so at the time, in 2017 or about there was a new hospital being constructed in the center of the state. So and I'm speaking obviously 4 years later, so I don't remember all the details specifically, but we require that the hospital provide the plans to the licensing folks. They, obviously spent days, weeks reviewing the plans. They drove up to the city in the middle of the state several times and back again. It took a very long time to assure that the construction of the facility was adequate for the good health of the patients. I mean, that is the purpose. And for all of that, they got $100. And I asked the staff, well, does that $100 really cover the cost of you working for weeks and traveling to the center of the state and back? I mean, obviously it did not. What we were doing is relying upon pretty much the oil and gas and coal industries to pay the cost of having your loved one go to a healthcare facility that's in good shape. It seems to me that it makes a lot more sense to have the cost of these services go to the beneficiaries of them. And a person might say, in a sort of a libertarian moment, well, why should we license these facilities? Let them just build up. And you have to admit, if you're putting your mom into a nursing home or having your child be operated on, to find out later that they had, for some reason, no fire escape plan, that the dirty laundry was right next to the food supply, or something obviously kind of ridiculous, but that the answer then is, well, no, we don't check ahead of time. When you find defects like this, you should just sue them. I mean, I really don't think that that's the way we want to treat healthcare facilities in particular. And then just to be clear, so this is again back in 2017. So the fees in the neighboring states may have gone up, but just so that you know from my research at that time, we were charging $100, and as the bringer of the bill presented, we were raising that to $500. So in 2017, in the state to the south of us, they charged $8,000 for a hospital with less than 26 beds, and up to $20,000 for facilities over 100 beds. In Nebraska, they charged $1,750 for under 51 beds, plus a fee based on how many surgeries you did. In Nevada, they charged $9,500 plus a fee per bed for a rural hospital and $14,000 for larger hospitals. South Dakota charged $1,000 to $5,000. So just to point out that even 4 years ago, we were so far from actually meeting the cost of the service. So I am on and in favor of this bill. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here because obviously we've already talked about, but I do want to throw one more concept in on the fees that would be assessed to those on parole. I find it interesting that we're actually not expecting them to actually make this payment. I mean, I don't disagree that they probably can't make this payment, but wouldn't we be sending a mixed signal to individuals that are just getting out of incarceration that we really don't expect them to listen to us or to follow the rules? So they're expecting them to pay, but we're only expecting 40% to pay. I just really see this as very convoluted and kind of frustrating as it comes out. The other aspect is in my other profession or my other life, I work with these individuals regularly, and most of them struggle to put food on the table, let alone another $25 a month towards the state. So the other is with the food licenses and all of this, we've got businesses that are struggling to even keep their doors open right now, that are doing everything they can to try just make ends meet, and we're going to raise the fee structure on them. So I think that this is something that needs to definitely not be brought up this year. And I understand that it's antiquated and maybe needs to be brought into the 21st century, but man, I don't know if this is the year to do that. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Chairman Olson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I don't know much about beating dead horses. I assume we'll get to that when we get to the animal cruelty bills. But as for this bill, I do want to talk about the probation supervision fee. First, let me say I am on and for this bill, but I'm trying to understand the good appropriators analysis of the fees for supervision, for UA testing, for the compact transfer, all of those, according to the fiscal note, do deposit into the general fund, which I believe is probably the point, because it proves that the fee is a new fee, because it's not a special revenue going to the administrative cost of whatever it may be doing, for example. So that would be my question to the good committee on appropriations, or the good appropriator who's tasked with this section. Was there a discussion of the need to place those fees on individuals on supervision, probation, and the compact transfer fee in order to cover administrative costs? Or was the discussion simply to create fees in order to deposit funds into the general fund? Because to me, those are two very, very different things. And so help flesh that out for me on what the discussion is on those fees. Thank you.
Representative Stitt.
Madam Chairman, yes, thank you very much for the question. The director of the department would like to be able to keep 6 probation and parole agents working. That's his specific goal. But the mechanism here, and these funds would help him do that. Otherwise, he'll be short on probation agents and parole agents. That's his specific goal. That was something disclosed and expressed by the director of the department. But the mechanism is for it to be deposited into the general fund, which I think is a good mechanism, because that leaves the ultimate question up to the legislature to decide how the money actually gets appropriated later.
Thank you. Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm also going to speak on the probation and parole stuff, so I will keep it brief, but as far as giving, I guess, some idea or perspective on it, in addition to what the representative, I don't have my list in front of me, I think the Springs.
Good representative, there you go.
So just mentioned, it's actually a cost savings to have a robust probation program. There is a requirement to maintain employment for almost every probationer, because of course, for obvious reasons, idle hands. And so of course, if let's say somebody would use the example of a single mom, well, then that's when your waiver would come in. And when you're looking at this, so then it's $1 a day. Now, again, I get that the disposable income is a real thing, but again, it's something that is done rather than incarceration, right? This is in exchange for being incarcerated, you will do these things that you're told and was required of you. So I think pitch in for $1 a day, because I don't think it should be forgotten or lost that every single one of these people did a significant offense in our community, such that we have decided that they can't or won't turn it around on their own without literally what would be an adult babysitter or help to do all of this stuff. It does incur costs. And so it's a huge privilege, and it's a huge privilege that also keeps them from being incarcerated. So I think, again, it's important to keep all that in mind, and to recognize that if this is something in order to keep the robust probation program going, it's also a benefit to all of them. And then finally, I guess I know parole is talked about a lot. I think you'd end up looking that the numbers of probationers is significantly higher than parolees, because of both misdemeanors and felonies. And so basically meaning these people, this group of people completely avoided or almost fully avoided an imposed sentence. So they get this opportunity to do this instead of being incarcerated. So I think pitching into those costs and maintaining this robust probation program is an important thing.
Thank you. Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think just to go back into the parole and probation issue here, on face value, it might sound like asking these folks to pay these fees is going to go towards providing funds for these services, right? It does cost money to be on probation and parole, absolutely. But unfortunately, sometimes the evidence doesn't support such things. So what we know here in trying to impose fees and costs on these folks on probation and parolees is that it often ends up costing the state more money. There was a 2019 research study on 10 different counties across several different states, but essentially what they found was when you try to impose fees and fines on probation and parolees, they end up oftentimes unable to pay, and the state ends up paying a lot more money to do things like bring reports to the courts, and then filing for warrants or court orders to discuss these issues in court. Sometimes, depending on the area, the court, they might end up sitting back in our county jail, which isn't free either, and is removing people from our communities where they can contribute financially in other ways rather than sitting incarcerated because they weren't able to pay their fines and fees. So while it sounds like it makes sense to ask these people to pay for the debt that they are costing, it ends up having a more significant impact negatively in our budgets looking forward. So I have serious concerns about this section. I think it will end up costing us a lot of money. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Representative Wharf.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Oops, turned off my video, sorry. I see my pretty face. I guess the more I listen to the debate, the more I'm probably lining up against this bill. I think House Bill 29 or 49, excuse me. I believe that it is following the intent of the statute that we only deal with one topic. But I do question the fact that we're talking about several different agencies. It's been pointed out that the public did not really participate very much during this process. And I see what appears to me kind of arbitrary fee increases. It seems like a lot of these fees doubled. I don't know if that's just coincidence, but it seems kind of questionable. I guess if I was an attorney, I might would say that it appears arbitrary and capricious in how that was done. And I guess the last thing that I'm going to point out is I really do think we need to look hard anytime we change the policy from requiring fees that are increased through statute and allowing it to be done through the rule process. I do think that's an abrogation of our authority as legislators. And I think we need to look hard at that. And so for those reasons, I'm going to speak against this bill and would urge the body to think about what the points I brought up. I really think this is the last bill we're hearing today. Obviously, it's been a long day, and I think sometimes we rush things through because we're all anxious to get home. So I would urge the body to use caution and to think about this, and I would just ask for a no vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Vice Chairman Hallinan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question is similar to that previous speaker's comments about whether the agencies really discuss these increases. I can imagine that the hospitals would have serious objections to the increase in the amount they'd have to pay, because they already pay for the hospital commission to examine every aspect of the hospital. And I think that costs, oh, I don't know what it costs, about $20,000-$30,000 every 2 or 3 years. So I don't know why they would want to pay another $1,000 for this license. And I think the same would be true of the surgery centers. I think they have also inspections by national bodies. So I really doubt that this committee, the committee that set these charges in place, really heard from these bodies because they pay a lot of money already for the licensing that they have. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And Chairman Nicholas, do you want to let Representative Washut ask his question before you jump in?
Sure.
Okay, Representative Washut.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, overall, I see the purpose of this bill. There are very, very few things that I can think of that cost the same as the year that Representative Larson and I got our driver's licenses. So our first driver's licenses. And so I look back and it obviously makes sense that we're going to try and update some of these fees. I have some heartburn with the supervision fee because I'm not clear on what is the order in which things are paid. If you're a convicted offender, you're probably going to be ordered to make a payment to victims' compensation. You may be ordered to pay restitution. You may be ordered to pay a fine. And now we're going to assess supervision fees. And so my big concern is that when we assess these supervision fees, will that make it less likely that these offenders will pay their restitution to our victims of crime? Will it make it less likely that they're going to be able to contribute to victims' compensation and those others? So I don't know if there's a fixed hierarchy at which the judiciary expects an offender to pay these things, but I am a little nervous about the supervision fees.
Thank you. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So just to answer a few of the questions, the ones from the good representative from in the northeastern part of the county, you're absolutely right. We had those same questions when we had discussions with the Department of Probation and Parole. And the reason that they came up with only 40% would be paying this fees is because if you come out, if you have child support, if you have whatever obligations you have, you can only take so much of a wage. And you got to allow them to continue to have their living wage, pay where they're at, if they're at a halfway house or wherever they're at, and cover their fundamental obligations. And in our discussions, we asked that exact same question. They said, well, of course, we're only going to have this fee assessed to those who can afford it. So if they get a job on an oil rig, they can pay it. If they're only working part-time at a local fast food store, they can't pay it. And so that will be left to the agency to sort out, and they represent it to us to be fair and reasonable about it, and they create kind of a policy or procedures for that to take place. But now let's go back to kind of to the bigger picture and some of the issues that were raised earlier. So I would respectfully say that none of the numbers that are out here are arbitrary. When we raised every fee that out there that was raised, we went and evaluated, or at least, and we broke this down into subcommittees. Everyone looked at what fees in other states were charging for the same service. And on every one of them, we are still below average and sometimes well below average on what we're raising them to. The fact is, we just haven't raised things for 50 years. And the other component of this, and I really have to think about it, is in part what we're doing is, but it's the Wyoming way, because people want to pay their own way. And if you provide a service, you should pay for that service. And the government or the taxpayer shouldn't be paying that service. And so when we looked at these fees, we looked at them and said, is this amount reasonable? Is it high? Is it low? How much does it cost to provide the service that we're raising the fee on? And is it a reasonable amount so that they're paying the cost of the government services being provided? And the answer was that every one of those was yes. And I would submit that's primarily the reason why we didn't have a lot of objections and protests. We had public hearings on this repeatedly, and if folks had big concerns, they would have told us. Plus, we talked to agencies, and we talked to hospitals, and we talked to providers to help come up with these numbers. And so I would submit that this is the Wyoming way. We're doing the right thing by making people responsible for the cost, pay their own way. They're certainly not usurious by any sense of the imagination. And we're in the process of finding $500 million in cuts in government. This is one step out of many, many more that you're going to see over the course between now and the end of session. And every little bit helps. We've got another fee bill that's coming up with the Secretary of State's on corporations and those types of things. That's going to raise close to $5 million a year. But how are we doing it? Well, we went and looked at all the other fees, and we will still be the lowest with those fees. And we'll be able to raise the rates because they haven't been raised for another 15, 20, 30 years. So we're trying to be reasonable. We're trying to be fair and do this the Wyoming way. And so we appreciate your support.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I'd like to respond just to a couple of scenarios that I think are presented. The one about being arbitrary. And I know the good representative from down there next to Mecca, the next state over, is doesn't mean that offensively, but I will tell you, this wasn't done on a half-hour venture. This took a lot of time to contact these people and find out what they thought was appropriate, and it wasn't capricious. There was a lot of time putting this together. Now, how do we get people to participate? Give me the magic formula for that, and we'll do that. But I will tell you, when there are issues, I hear about it, and when there are issues that people are concerned about, they come to committee meetings. We've had multiple here, and they didn't. Here's the thing that I think that we're going to have to love each other and come to understand is, a couple of days ago, we was talking about funding for some signs, and we heard the scenario of, well, there's people in the state that have children or loved ones with developmental disabilities, and we're cutting those funds. And how do we tell them we got money for signs, which was, we didn't appropriate money for that, but we have money for signs, but we can't pay for their children with developmental disabilities. Well, what I'm here to tell you is when we get to the budget, you're going to see a step 3 reductions in healthcare to 6% to foster parents. You're going to see a reestablishment of individual budget amounts to people with developmental disabilities. You're going to see the wait list frozen. You're going to see no emergency committee meetings to reevaluate that. You're going to see a 5% reduction to reimbursements for people that are on providers for Medicaid, and the list goes on. These are the people, these are the neighbors you're talking about. And we're going to say, sorry, we can't fund that because we couldn't raise a fee that hasn't been raised since 1973. And it is only, it is less than 4 times less than our neighboring states. So I think, we and maybe I come from this a little bit of different angle, because I know what some of these cuts are in the agencies that are coming. But I'm here to tell you that we're going to have to work hard. There are ways out of this, and there are ways to help give these funds, these healthcare funds. If you look at the healthcare facilities and you say these businesses are barely keeping their doors open, well, you've got nonprofit healthcare facilities that aren't paying property tax. They don't pay a corporate tax. Okay, how much more break do you give somebody? You've got for-profit that have no corporate tax, The corporate taxes is going to the home state. That's who gets to absorb all of that. And so I think we've got to sit back and readjust and not throw up these emotional M80s and really address some of these issues. This is a small step. It's not a lot of money. It makes a course correction that's valid and worthy. We've put a lot of time in doing it. And I would just hope that we would consider supporting it, because there are your neighbors, your family that needs the help.
Thank you. Speaker Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I have a couple of questions. This comes under the Title 35 Healthcare Facilities Fees. And it's just a clarification. I know the good Vice Chair of Appropriations is quite familiar with these, and they come really down to terminology. So I have two of them of interest to me. One is the definition of a critical access hospital. I think that's actually a federal definition. And so I don't know that it's in statute. I don't know that it's otherwise defined. And what my question is if we have a fee for a critical access hospital and we have also a fee for a hospital, I just don't want it to be a stacked fee, meaning if you're a hospital and a critical access hospital, we don't want them to pay $1,500. So I think that if we're going to, maybe it's a really subtle nuance for the Vice Chair, but I just show that. Madam Chairman, I'll just continue with the second one. The second one is on the assisted living facilities and nursing homes when it comes down to beds. And as the good Vice Chair and many of the members know here, that you may be licensed at a X number of beds, let's say 100, but you only staff at 50. You only can get staffing to have 50 or 80 or whatever it is. So I'm just throwing it out there that maybe we should think about an average, annual census as the fee, so that it's more and not that these fees are exorbitant, and actually I support this concept in the bill, but I just throw out a couple nuances within the healthcare financing. And finally, Madam Chairman, with your indulgence, I can tell you the Title VII stuff, I will support this bill on committee of the whole. But with the Title VII and the probation parolee issue in there, in the end, if it's still in there in the end, I will not be able to support this bill. And I'll tell you why. We've spent 3 years on justice reform. And I want somebody to speak to how this fits into justice reform that we've spent so much time on. And the previous chairman of committee number 1, worked diligently on both sides, and the entire committee did. So I want to understand that. I want to understand that there's actually we talked about the undue benefit to the agency. I want to talk about the undue consequence to the parolee or probationer. If there is, whether it's a perception of more revenue or not, and whether there's a realized benefit to the agency, if someone is on probation and the individual that controls the length has some degree of input into the length of someone's probation or parole, is the person that is potentially not gaining in the sense, but they have a say in the length of that parole and probation. They don't make the final decision. I grant you that's the courts, but they certainly have a role. The third thing I'd say about is, do they actually get a benefit from it? I can tell you one of the things that I hear most, and I've had some pretty up close and personal contact with the court system, with the parole and probation system. And one of the things I hear most is the system we have now is overwhelmed, i.e. not enough folks to handle the cases we have. If this isn't going to help it, we're just charging people for services they don't get. Case in point, somebody transferred in here from another state. 6 months before they got their first interview, 6 months, they had a pretty hard time getting employment, pretty hard time getting a lot of things done in the state of Wyoming because the system just couldn't absorb them. So if we're gonna add a fee, let's actually have some direct benefit to the agency and say that I'm not in favor of the fee, but let's actually have something where the individuals they're captive. I mean, they are part of the system. They actually see benefit. The third thing I'd say is on the 1B, the drug screening testing. I can tell you from firsthand experience, because I've assisted folks with that process. Right now, folks are paying a lot more than that. A lot more than that to get the actual tests done, not just for the privilege of getting the test done, for the actual test. So with those things, just I'm fine with the bill overall, with the exception of this section. I'll support the bill in this reading, and but I would like the hospital and the bed capacity issue potentially addressed if there's any interest in that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Stith.
Madam Chairman, I speak in support of House Bill 49 to address a couple of the issues that have been raised. It is true, I did not interview any prisoners, inmates, probationers, or parolees about paying $25 a month to not be in prison. But a little common sense goes a long way. If I'm talking with a client who's charged with a crime, and I tell the person, well, you can either pay me thousands of dollars to go to a jury trial that you will probably lose and then you will be incarcerated, or you can pay less than $1 a day to keep your freedom. I think common sense tells you that paying less than $1 a day is a pretty good deal. This is not an onerous fee to put on them. With respect to the comments about whether the agency benefits or doesn't benefit, if the issue that we're concerned about is that we don't have enough probation and parole agents, then you should be in favor of House Bill 49 as it reads, because it generates some revenue, which goes in the general fund, but which the Appropriations Committee and this body would have the discretion to allocate to make sure that we don't cut positions or that we add positions even. I'm not expressing an opinion about whether we should add or not add positions, but when we're looking at budget cuts that have been extremely significant for all the agencies, including this one, that department has suffered is taking a $23 million cut from $289 to $266 million in a biennium. This is pretty reasonable. And as the chairman of the committee stated, we have to face the reality that we've got to make ends meet. We're going to have to do a lot of things to try to scrape up the nickels and dimes. And this is one balanced measure that does that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Romero Martinez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think overall this bill is very good. The part about probation and justice reform is very bad. So I won't support it as it's currently written. I also wanted to make comment, and I apologize to the executive who's residing somewhere in the state for my previous foul on the play. But I do want to make a couple of comments about justice reform. One of the previous representatives, I don't remember if it's from the Rock with No Water or where, but anyways, somebody of this body had mentioned something about living wage, livable wage. I mean, we need to really, what this conversation is really doing for us is it's opening way to other issues that we need to address. But as it stands, I support overall the bill, but that part is just misguided. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. And Vice Chairman Larson, would you care to respond to that at this point? No. Okay. Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Just one moment, Chairman Olson. I just remind the body again about our language and just be cautious about how we refer to the work that's been done by our committees during the interim. Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In strong support of the bill. And just to hopefully speed up the conversation as it relates to probation and parole and supervision. It's a good conversation and I appreciate it, but I want to give the body reassurance that we don't have to vote down this bill because of those provisions. That would be extremely negligent. That I don't know that we need to spend a whole lot more debate time on the probation, parole, supervision concepts. The good representative from the land where the majestic mountains overshadow him referenced that he has an amendment on second reading, and I think you'll have opportunities to address those concerns through that second reading amendment. I also have 2 amendments on second reading to address those concerns. So, I don't know that those will address everyone's concerns with probation and parole, but that's the idea. So I think this is a good bill. It's a necessary bill for all the reasons that have been stated by the good Committee on Appropriations. I just want the body to understand that you will have some amendments to clean that language up, and you'll have every opportunity to discuss it on further readings. Just trying to move the bill forward and continue the discussion on further readings. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. And Vice Chairman Larson, did you want to let Chairman Harshman go ahead and pitch a question to you before, or then we'll let you bring it home? Yep. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just on in support of the bill. I don't know, I just quick math, 1.7 million, just even if the phase 3 cuts go forward, which I'm telling you, you're not going to like the phase 3 cuts. I think this House of Representatives will be on the floor with budget amendments to restore many of those. But even if none of those are restored, minimum, we're about 270 million short paying our bills every year. And, you could say, well, we could take the 1% or the LSRA refuel or all that. So maybe we can pick up 150, 60 million. So you're still 100 million short. And oil will come back. I think it will. And, but this 1.7 million, so we got about another 100 talks like this. And it's Groundhog Day, and I think Phil saw his shadow. So we got at least 6 more weeks of these talks. And it's important. So I really appreciate the debate, and there's going to be more of these talks, boy, and it's just going to go on. And these should be friendly talks. We're going to have this in our state to see what we really want and what we're going to pay for. And so appreciate all the good debate, and I'm going to vote to move this forward. Thank you. And thanks to the committee for your hard work. I know you've been working on this, thousands of fees out there. They've looked at, you look at that list, it's mind-boggling, and really appreciate your work. Thank you.
Vice Chairman Larson, should we do some stretches? So you can just bring us on into home base.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And so, what every member of Appropriations' dream is to say, I get to go and raise fee increases in front of the body. It's just what I've been dying to do, and so, we appreciate your kind disposition towards us and how gentle you've been with us. But these are important talks, and we take this whole conversation very seriously. And so I want to come back to the good speakers. He had a couple of questions that I think were left not answered. And that was when I was looking at the fee increases on hospitals versus critical access hospitals, they're identified as distinct different entities. And so if they're a critical access hospital, that's the fee they pay if they have that designation. If you don't think that's clear enough, I would, that's just going off the conversation that I had with the agency. If you think that needs to be clear, we can certainly amend that. And then we could certainly look at an amendment on the assisted living capacity being the norm for a year. I like the approach that these folks come in with a bed capacity, and they're licensed at that capacity. I guess I think that that's a reasonable approach. It's a sound approach. I understand the staffing challenges, but I think that that's a reasonable and easy way to maintain that. I agree with the previous speaker, the former speaker, as a matter of fact, that we're just getting warmed up for some of these conversations that we're going to have, And I know everybody's doing this and trying to get a feel for what everybody else is doing. I would just hope that this bill would move forward and we could get these adjusted and bring them up to where they need to be. There's no question that some of these are raised more than double. Well, yeah, it's 94, 73. I still had kids in grade school in 94. I didn't have, well, I had gray hair, but not this much gray hair. So I would, Madam Chairman, I'd call for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. And before I call for the question, I just want you all to know that your little boxes and your faces seem to be getting smaller as the day has worn on. Either that or I've got to make an emergency run to my optometrist before tomorrow. At any rate, question having been called. All those in favor of Chairman Nicholas's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so, that House Bill 49 pass, please raise your hands and please hold them up, please, so we can get this count. Very good. House Bill 49 having.
Well, you need to call for the noes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Those opposed, same sign. Okay. Unless my eyesight has failed me completely, Chief Clerk, I believe that did pass.
Yes, it did. So you can call it, please.
Thank you. House Bill 29, having passed the Committee of the Whole.
No, 49.
49, see, eyesight going, has now passed the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you so much. And with that, I move that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand to the screen. Again. Motion carries. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Reading clerk will read the Committee of the Whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 29, do pass amended. House Bill 37, do pass. Senate File 37, do pass. House Bill 49, do pass.
Sorry, Madam Chairman.
I move the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report, Mr. Speaker.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed, raise your hand. The motion carries. Congratulations, Chairman Flitner.
Woo-hoo. Good work, people.
Very nicely done. Very nicely done, Chairman, members of the body. Thank you very much for your hard work. Now we're going to have to stretch this out till 6 o'clock at the request of Representative Gray. He likes a full day. He wants a full day, so we're going to stretch it out now. Chairman Wilson, did you have some order business?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was going to make a committee announcement if we're to that point.
Oh, we're not quite there. Let me get through a
Okay.
couple standing committee reports and messages, etc. So, Chief Clerk, standing committee reports.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 26 engrossed, Animal Abuse Statutes, Reorganization and Update, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representative Crago, Larson D, Oakley, Olson, Provenza, Williams, Washut, Yin, Zawanitzer. Signed, Representative Olson, Chairman. That is
That's it. All right. Thanks, Chief Clerk. Sorry, my apologies. Messages from the Senate. Anything there?
No, sir.
Any other business for the body?
No, sir.
All right. So generally, we just take a motion for the Majority Floor Leader, and then we go to committee announcements. So, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow, the second day of February 2021. Third day of February, somebody's saying so. That's correct, third day of February.
Thank you very much. Committee announcements. Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, will meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock virtually to consider Senate File 53, Ground Ambulance Service Provider Assessment Act.
Thank you. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 7, Corporations, will meet tomorrow at noon to hear the following 2 bills: Senate File 18, Universal Occupational Licensure, and House Bill 14, Rights of Way Along Public Ways.
Thank you. Chairman Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, will meet tomorrow, February 3rd, 2021 at 9 a.m. to hear Senate File 61, Amortization of Sales and Use Tax. Mr. Speaker, I just would like to say that there's going to be a special place in heaven for Chairman Flitner. She showed patience beyond belief.
She grew up as a sheep herder. Sheep people have patience. Chairman Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet tomorrow, February 3rd, upon noon recess to consider House Bill 63, Early Childhood Education.
Thank you. I see Chairman Zwanitzer came back. Your hand is raised, Chairman Zwanitzer. Did you have something additional? Nope. All right. Any other committee announcements? Any other committee announcements? So for the members of the body and the public, in consultation with the Majority Floor Leader, Chief Clerk, we're going to continue holding at the chairman's pleasure. If they'd like to continue holding committee meetings and have bills in their drawers they want to hear through Thursday. We will not have standing committee meetings on Friday, as Friday will likely be fairly busy with conference committees as we finalize bills that for this session. So there will continue to be committee meetings, and we appreciate the good work. Certainly, we're still trying to prioritize our colleagues' bills, the Senate files, so we can get them through the process, but we're also loading the pipeline for the next process. So there'll also be bill introductions as we get probably till Thursday. We'll probably do quite a few bill introductions, and that'll prime the pump for this kind of winterim, if you will, the short interim where we'll have some committee meetings. There will both be committee meetings, i.e. standing committee meetings in this winterim, and then there's also the interest, and several committees have already requested joint committee meetings. The appropriations already meets that way. Agriculture is going to take a report from the federal agency in that manner, and then if other committees are interested in doing something like that, that's available to them as well. So we appreciate the continued work of the committees. That's where the rubber meets the road, and we look forward to more work out of them. I see Speaker Pro Tem Greer has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In that vein, I'll go ahead and announce that on Friday, the Joint Minerals meeting is going to have an educational meeting at 8 a.m. We're working on a lineup to bring in to just discuss the current regulatory environment and its effects on oil and gas, to sort of allow us maybe to get our thinking caps on as legislators. And while that'll be for our joint minerals committee, made sure that LSO would send an invite out so that any of the other members of the House would like to log in and follow along, they'll have the opportunity. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Speaker Pro Tem. Any other business for the good of order? Chief Clerk?
Nothing.
Majority Floor Leader?
All good.
All right. So members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor of the House adjourning until 10 a.m. Wednesday, February 3rd, please raise your hand. All those opposed? The House is adjourned. Thank you and have a great evening.